Sort of coming Chapter 833. Ning Yao ordered a few drinks with the inn shopkeeper, and by the way, ordered an extra room. The shopkeeper glanced at Chen Ping'an, and Chen Ping'an was silent. Looking at what I did, the conscience of heaven and earth, the two of us did not collude. Besides, what can I say? I opened the inn. The closed disciple squinted at his husband, and the husband squinted at the street outside the store. The night was heavy, traveling in a foreign land, slightly lonely. Sitting down at the other side of the room, Chen Ping'an helped Mr. pour a bowl of wine, then looked at Ning Yao. She shook her head, and Chen Ping'an only poured a bowl for herself. In the most difficult part of his life, Zenji, a young man from Shijianhu, and Su Xinjai, a female ghost, accompanied Chen Ping'an through the landscape. The old scholar probably felt that the atmosphere was a little silent, so he picked up the wine bowl, touched Chen Ping'an lightly, and then took the lead in speaking, as if Mr. S. examination of the school disciple scholarship. There is a saying in the Unmasking article. Peace. Chen Ping'an just took a sip of wine, and her husband mentioned unmasking. The answer was actually very easy to guess. He quickly put down the wine bowl and said, "Mr. once said that wine is a mess." The old scholar smiled and asked, "Then you don't know, why did your husband admonish the world like this back then?" Chen Ping'an said, "I guess my husband was poor back then and couldn't drink alcohol, so those who bought wine and paid for it didn't blink." The old scholar clapped his hands on the table and laughed. "What is a proud student? This is it. It's like the left and right. You were silly back then." Had liked to use these words to block himself, so Mr. should not be allowed to slap himself in the face. My husband wrote so many sage doctrines in the book, and I can't fit a few big baskets. I can really do it all. The most intimate and least padded jacket is indeed a closed disciple. The old scholar drank a bowl of wine. As soon as the bowl fell, Chen Ping'an was already full. The old scholar stroked his beard and said with emotion, "At that time, the most uncomfortable thing was to turn on the lamp and flip the book at night and herd some drunks in the alley. I vomit. My husband can't wait to sew their mouths and waste money by ruining drinks. I made a big ambition for my husband back then, safe." Chen Ping'an said, "If you become a court official or a Confucian saint in the coming year, you must make a rule that you must not vomit while drinking." The old scholar nodded, "Yes, yes." Ning Yao changed his mind and poured himself a bowl of wine. Chen Ping'an talked about Shijianhu and Su Xinjai in general, and during the period also talked about the old rural woman who lived a life of misery calmly. The old Shotsai twisted a salty dried peanut shell with 2 fingers, put it in his mouth, and nodded. The only knowledge of a hero in the world is nothing but calmness. The villain reverses the way of the world and turns his backhand upright. It is calm. If I am weak, you nothing can help. If you can be alone, you can still be calm. In fact, all 3 of you here know that the inn, the girl, and the large vase are all arranged by Cui Yang. A lake of books, let Chen Ping'an ghost hit the wall for many years. The whole person was thin and skinny, but as long as it passed, it seemed that apart from the uncomfortable, there was only uncomfortable. Cui Yang never gave much, especially did not give Chen Ping'an even the slightest benefit, whether it was Tong Ye's last landscape painting, or the girl in the inn tonight. Cui Huang just gave Chen Ping'an's heart to his younger brother. Put a light in the distance. If you don't get there by yourself, or if you choose to avoid a detour, you will miss it for the rest of your life. What Cui Yang did seems to be telling Chen Ping'an a very cruel truth. Despair, you asked for it, so hope, you also want to find it. Ning Yao asked, "Since I have the honor to meet her again in this life, what are your plans next?" In Ning Yao's view, in Su Xinhai's life, the girl barely had some aptitude for cultivation, so she could naturally take it to Luopishan to practice. Don't forget that Chen Ping'an is best at doing things. It's not about accounting, or even practice, but for others. Protect the way. But Ning Yao didn't think that if a girl went to the mountain immediately to practice, it must be the best choice. Chen Pingan said, I have to talk to her a few more words first. In fact, Chen Pingan had been thinking about this when he arrived, carefully. Generally speaking, only by practicing, the young girl who still doesn't know her name in this life has the opportunity to regain her consciousness, remember the past life, and renew the relationship in this life. Just like many ordinary masters, on the road of life, you can always meet some familiar people, but most of them don't think much, just after a few glances, they pass by. But remembering the events of the previous life, it must be the last thought of Su Shinsai in the previous life. Does the girl in this life want it now? The old scholar smiled and said, you can come as you are good to the little girl. As for what is really good, you don't need to worry. Many times we have to admit that not everything can be planned in advance, but really only things can come. You can solve it. Peace, don't forget one thing especially, for the girl, she is just her, but in your eyes, she is Su Xinjai of Shijianhu and Huanglishan. If you don't go up the mountain, for example, in this big city of Lijing, you will live a life of stability in the downhill market, but the years are shorter. It's not a good thing to marry as a woman, to be married to each other and to teach your children. The little girl is willing to go up the mountain one day, and it will not be too late to come back to practice. Luopa Mountain still has some family background, and there is no shortage of preachers and immortal money. Chen Pingan nodded and said, you must understand this principle before you can do the rest. From beginning to end, Chen Pingan seemed very calm, but in just a few words, he had already drunk several sips of wine. Drinking quickly is a taboo at the wine table. No matter how much alcohol you drink, it is easy to overturn the wine tank, and then I mostly ran under the wine table and claimed to be invincible. Chen Pingan said, why did Mr. suddenly rush to imitate Bai Yujing and talk to others? The old scholar cocked Erlang's legs, took a sip of wine, and said with a smile, I have cultivated myself for many years in the Gongda Lin, and I have accumulated a lot of grievances. Learning. I have studied there for many years. I am also a little diligent. I really want to say the reason. My mouth is itchy, like being greedy for wine with no money in my pocket. Chen Pingan nodded and said, Mr. S. discussion this time, although the disciple regrets that he didn't see it with his own ears, but only with the vision that swept over half of the world, he knows that the knowledge of the opponent's husband is very high. Sir, can't you go here? The old Shiozai stepped on the bench with one leg, lifted the wine bowl, gently bumped, and nodded vigorously. The old master is indeed very knowledgeable. He is also one of the world's most prosperous saints in the world. There is nothing very powerful. Lao Shiozai and Chen Pingan each finished a bowl of wine. Chen Pingan smiled and turned over the wine bowl to show that he hadn't left. Lao Shiozai glanced at his wine bowl and took another sip. The wine bowl, say full, continued to be full. The old scholar thought that if you take such a drink, you won't get really drunk in the end. I won't get up until 3 polls tomorrow, and I will complain about Mr. Junqian, who is not by his side. Chen Pingan poured the wine again, took off his boots, sat cross-legged, and said with emotion, Sir, this is a harmony between people alone, to fight for the right time and place. The old scholar sighed, it's a disadvantage, it's difficult. Ning Yao found out that these two disciples didn't talk about winning or losing, and the other didn't ask about the result. They just praised the old master here. The higher the old master's knowledge, the husband wins, naturally the higher the knowledge. The old Shiozai turned his head and smiled, Girl Ning, this journey with the sword is well known in the world. From now on, I will say hello to Aliang and the left and right sides. What sword intent and swordsmanship are the highest, I quickly surrender their respective titles. Ning Yao said, I don't come to Howren often in the future, so don't worry about the Confucian temple. If it weren't for Mr. Wenxing, she would not bother to explain anything like this. The old scholar smiled and shook his head, worry about what this does. The Confucian temple still has the tolerance. Now it is the Lixing personally taking care of things. The atmosphere is very different from the past. Ning girl, if you don't come often, I'm worried. What I really worry about is your lack of freedom from now on. Look at the patriarch of the three sects, who would visit another home. As the first person in the colorful world, Ning Yao's situation afterwards is of course much better than that of Qin Qing, who has withered the city for thousands of years, but in the end there is the same suffering. Ning Yao said, "One world, free to come and go, is enough." The old scholar sighed and shook his head, "It's too early." Ning Yao was a little helpless, but Master Wenxing said so, she just listened. When she remembered something, she told Chen Ping'an. The old coachman previously promised her that Chen Ping'an could ask him 3 questions without breaking his oath. Chen Ping'an smiled and nodded. The old scholar seemed to have felt it. After drinking, he smiled and said, "Some are mixed up with famous bastards, but the teachers can't teach them. The changes will not be changed. You really can only wait for them one by one. It sucks, it's gone." As for who the old scholar is scolding, it may be the old oilman who does not do in some official circles and is the only one who is the first in the world. Maybe it is some old sword immortal in Jingyang Mountain, maybe it is something in the world. The old guy with a higher level of life-saving skills, the old scholar did not name him, who knows? Chen Ping'an nodded and said, "I wrote it down." The 3 of them noticed a strange aura almost simultaneously. Not in Dali capital, but far away in Jiangyi, it is a dark road that young people avoid. The old scholar relied on the sage and the heaven and earth sense of heaven and earth, Ning Yao relied on the ascendant realm to cultivate, and Chen Ping'an relied on the Tao Axian ripples of victory over the great road. Chen Ping'an got up and said, "I'll go outside and have a look." Ning Yao is about to leave the inn with Chen Ping'an. The old scholar smiled and said, "Ning girl, you don't have to follow, the Dali court has done a good job of opening the way. You are too strong in swordsmanship to help. It's okay, just some precautions for the colorful world, anyway I figured it out by myself. It's not a fake public benefit. Let's talk to you. Pure sword repair, outside the battlefield, the killing power is endless, the killing ability is the first, the living is not necessarily." Ning Yao settled down again, Chen Ping'an shrank into the mountains and rivers, dressed in a blue shirt, and gathered together in a misty figure. He stepped to the top of the capital wall and looked far away. Only hundreds of miles away, the sky was overwhelming and gathered into a winding serpentine-long river. On the road that is specially selected for the inaccessible wilderness, Yin Qi is too strong, because there are few living people, Yang Qi is thin, and ordinary Qi fighters, even if they are good at approaching, they may have to kill the way. If you take a closer look at the aura, you can find that the trees on the road, even if they are not stepped on, actually have no contact with the undead, but the green color has already revealed a bit of unusual death, such as the face was blue. A group of great training fighters outside the capital city are responsible for guarding this section of the city. One of the old worshippers and the blue-shirt swordsman who appeared abruptly asked, "Who is here?" Chen Ping'an drew out the innocence card from his sleeve and hung it around his waist. Since it was from his own family, the old priest just clasped his fists after checking the authenticity of the innocence card and stopped interfering. Chen Ping'an was silent for a moment, and asked, "Old sir, the number of people seems to be extremely large this time." "It seems that there are about 30,000. The old priest nodded, "Because it is the penultimate call, there will be more." In fact, the old worshipper originally didn't want to talk more. It was just that the uninvited guest said "number of people" instead of words such as ghosts and ghosts that made the old man willing to talk. In the northern area of Dei, In the Longxing land of the Song clan, there is a water and land law meeting held by the abbot of the Beijing Translation Bureau and is Zhou Tian Dajia responsible for the Chongshu Bureau to extradite the ghosts on the battlefield ruins. The hometown has been held for many years, day and night, and it still hasn't ended. It is true that too many people died in the war in a foreign land by the Dali frontier army. In these years, the emperor issued the decree of the Dali court, and the Ministry of Rites took the lead in the specific preparations. The ministry paid for it, and the Ministry of War sent people to guard it. Just for the mighty Yin soldiers to cross the border, they opened up 3 costly landscape routes. Every time they rushed, there were thousands or even more than 10,000 battlefield souls who stopped in the daylight to prevent the remaining souls from being exposed to the sun. They inhabited the landscape formation set up along the way by the Dali trainer. For a long-distance tour at night, there are not only the great monks chanting all the way, holding the tin to lead the way, but also the Taoist real person chanting the Taoist secretly, ringing the bell to pull it, and even the Qintian supervisor and the Dali iron ride on both sides of the road to prevent the wandering soul, coupled with the cooperation of the gods of mountains and rivers, the city gods and the Wenwu temple. This matter has never been a major mistake, and it will not disturb the people in Yang. It is rumored that an attendant from the frontier army of the Ministry of War in the capital once openly threatened the officials of the household department not to discuss any difficulties with Laozi. This matter has not been discussed. Even if your household department sells iron, dismantles the government offices housing materials and exchanges money, you must ensure that everything the dead souls of the Dai frontier army will not stay in the battlefield site for too long, so that their souls will be scattered. For this reason, the Ministry of Defense specially assigned 5 or 6 people, and they stayed as temporary servants at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Affairs office every day to supervise and monitor the progress of this matter. Quarrels are common. In addition to Dali worshipping monks, Confucian scholars, gentlemen and sages, and leading the way for the 2 masters of Buddhism and Taoism, there are also Qin Tianjian Dishi, Jingshi Wenwu temple heroes, capital city god temple, capital earth temple, each performing their duties and responsible for each at the Shanshui ferry. The dead are picked up. Chen Pingan stood on the head of the city, watching from a distance the scene of the night tour. The country is intact, so where are the people? The mountains and rivers are vast, and the clouds are vast. These mountains and rivers meet, but there is already a difference between life and death, and the difference between yin and yang. Indeed, how can there be so many people who see it at first sight and prepare for laughter? Chen Pingan turned his head and saw Song Zus young monks Yufeng Yuanyu in the distance. He was probably busy rushing to the Yinming Road as early as possible. Everyone was rushing and there was no deliberately concealed trail. Sword repaired Song Zus' feet. Stepping on a sword and dragging a very long golden line, the array master Han Zhoujin seemed to be walking. Every time he stepped out, the mountains and rivers were several miles in the blink of an eye, and there were circles of spiritual energy ripples under his feet, like the blooming flowers in the night. In addition, Dao Lu Geling, military monk Yu Yu, Confucian Lu Hui, and young novice monks also performed magical skills and hurried far away. Chen Pingan's figure turned into 18 sword lights, and the city head seemed to bloom suddenly. A dozen miles away, Chen Pingan staggered to the ground, and once again drove on his way with the unskilled sword escape method, finally hanging high in the sky. Stopped in shape, using several kinds of talisman including snow-mud talisman to help him hide his energy, squatting on a tree branch on the top of a wild mountain, overlooking the road below the mountain. Lu Yi, who came from the 3 religions of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, and Hojue, and Guling, obviously had long been familiar with this matter, and had fallen at the forefront of the Yinming path through which Yin soldiers passed. The soldiers took the lead in the walk, and the little soldier girl from the Yu family of Shangju Kingdom, not to be outdone, walked side by side with a group of martial arts spirits from the capital and Jiangyi. A landscape road for the extradition of the dead is extremely wide, and 4 camps are vaguely separated. Yu Yu and Wumiao Yingling are the most numerous, accounting for nearly half. Song Su and Han Zhoujin found a young man standing in the rear. He was riding a horse in the Dali Iron Cavalry. He was a sword repairman in the Yuaning realm who was less than 100 years old. Seeing the two of them, the rider just nodded. Han Zhoujin took out 2 armored horse talisman and rode forward with Song Su. Han Zhoujin and a woman who had a good relationship asked heartily, "What's the matter?" Because Han Zhoujin discovered that the Dade monks and Dao men, real people who led tonight, are all fresh faces, and their expressions are haggard, as if they are not lightly injured, especially the few martial arts heroes. She can even see them when they go. His golden body was worn to an extent visible to the naked eye, and the stars disappeared into the night. The colleague female cultivator couldn't hide her tired look, and said, "Once there were too many toads this time, and furthermore, the Ministry of Rites had issued a death order. Dao, the spirit energy, was consumed too much along the way, and it has disturbed the landscape more than expected. The air quantity is at least 20%. It is obviously to blame us for bad work. I am worried that there will be accidents in the next night tour. Master Shang Shu has spoken. What else can we do? Can only bite the bullet and ignore the damages of the path. Otherwise, no one will be able to take the next evaluation of the ceremony and punishment." Song Su asked, "Hua Jing, is there anyone making trouble along the way?" The Yuaning realm Jiangxi's face was indifferent and said, "Look back and see the spy for yourself." Song Su was accustomed to this Yuan Hua Jing, nicknamed Yelang. It is the leader of the 5 gas trainers on another hill. The two sides have disagreeable temperaments, and they have always been difficult to deal with. Only on the battlefield can they cooperate seamlessly. Yuan Huajing frowned slightly and found that there were more than a dozen dead souls on the battlefield on the road ahead, showing signs of their souls dissipating, and said in a deep voice, "Du Jian, are you blind?" A young man behind with a pale face and chapped lips. He was already exhausted from riding a pawn. He was originally sitting on horseback while napping while warming up his aura. He was really exhausted, but after hearing Yuan Huajing's words, he did not hesitate to get up, point his toes, swept forward, raised a palm high, twisted his wrist, and soft silk threads appeared between the 5 fingers, slightly lifted, and the silk threads gathered in an orderly manner. After the formation, golden light gleamed. It was actually a radiant Luo Jingyi, and the light fell on the walking ground of those ghosts. In this way, the young guards the wind while holding the compass in his hand, sheltering the other side. As long as there is a slight sign of the soul of the dead soul, the precious light will shine. Song Su reminded, "It's too late." Yuan Huajing said indifferently, "It seems that it is not yet your turn to have a golden pill to point your fingers." There are 5 people in Yuan Huajing's group. In addition to his Yuaning realm sword repairman, there is also a ghost monk, a Yinyang family chi practitioner, and the other 2 were from Yishou. They are obviously more murderous than Song Zu's 6 people. Song Su didn't take it seriously, and instead took the initiative to talk to Yuan Huajing about the young hermit's entry into Beijing. He met him and talked about the weirdness of the preacher Feng Anti. Yuan Huajing nodded, "I have seen Ning Yao's sword lights before." Song Su hesitated for a moment, but still reminded, "There is a clear distinction between public and private." The rider next to him was born in the Yuan family of Zhuguo, and Yuan Huajing's younger brother was the concubine of the Yuan family who was married to the prostitute of the Su family in Qingfeng City. Yuan Huajing sneered and said, "Because the prince's surname is Song, can you be so generous?" Song Su choked for a while and suddenly laughed, "You really should have a good chat with that official Chinese. It is rare for Yuan Huajing to take the initiative to speak. It is still difficult for you 6 to join hands." Song Su nodded. You said that she would only be chopped and cut vegetables. There was a rehearsal afterwards. Lu Hui said that relying on those words spoken by Chen Pingan would be of no benefit to the situation of the war and can be ignored. Yuan Huajing said, Xiao Yu still didn't find a suitable candidate for the criminal department? If it's Zhou Haijing, I don't think the weight is enough. Song Su shook his head and said, You don't know what Jing Qian's identity is. Zhao Shulang can only step back and determine his aptitude through the questioning of Yu Hong and her. But even so, it is still the case, but it is the simplest duty. The woman who drove side by side with Han Zhoujin was the ghost monk. She asked in her heart, I saw the young hermit, what did she look like? Han Zhoujin smiled and said, Excellent, personable, romantic sword fairy. The female ghost curled her lips, but since he is here, he is just looking from a distance, I will admire him less than before. Han Zhoujin explained with a smile, he is a sword fairy, even if he is a master of martial arts with a master of boxing, what can he do? The female ghost nodded her head, agreeing, that's right. It makes sense. But regret is inevitable in my heart. What's wrong? The female ghost can't think of spring anymore. A young man from the same hometown, for the sake of his beloved woman, has stood alone in the city for many years, and she is not allowed to admire him a little. Just her temper, when I saw each other in the future, it was just a hungry tiger attacking the sheep without a word. Chen Pingan was on the top of the mountain, and finally carefully looked at the specific situation of the 30,000 battlefield. The next moment, a bright sword light broke through the night. On the road shining on the earth, it is as bright as the day, and the smallest detail is visible, but the most unusual thing is that the sword aura is so majestic and majestic. The ghosts that were already turbid, unreasonably added a bit of clear eyes. In the extreme distance, suddenly there was an imaginary image of a mountain, like the golden body of a monk, standing upright on the road. At the feet of the heroes of the Wenwu Temple, Yu Yu, and the young novice monk, there were waves of ripples, sparkling under the moonlit night, like, there was a smooth, mirror-like waterway. It is a wonderful pattern of interdependence between mountains and rivers, the mountains are full of energy, and the waterways are full of aura. Not only that, the young novice monk suddenly lowered his head and then turned his head, surprised to find that a group of ghosts stretched for miles behind him, and a golden scripture appeared at his feet. All ghosts and ghosts, when they walk on this road, golden lotus flowers bloom at their feet, swaying. Confucian Lu Hui walked down the road, followed by the Yinling behind him. Underneath his feet were snow-white words refined from frontier poems. At the feet of Dao Lu Guling and several Dao sect real people, there are a series of mysterious Dao tactics, making a road appear colorful and glaze. And Yu Yu was shocked to find that on the road in front of her, in the water and light, there appeared a fictitious flying sword that was as big as a boat, laying the road. The vision didn't stop there. When the blue shirt in the far distance began to climb slowly, in an instant, golden threads bloomed from his body, drifting away, killing the more than 30,000 heroes on the battlefield. Pull one by one. Climbing alone, dragging forward. The old Shutsai squatted on the side and let Chen Pingan take a rest for a while, and said with emotion, I pity Mei Huaiwe, I can't bear to sleep all night. Chen Pingan echoed, I can't bear to sleep all night, Yua Mei I pity me. The old talent slapped his hand with a boxing, wonderful. Chen Pingan said, it's Mr. S. disciple after all. The old Shutsai smiled and said, smelly boy, there is no outsider at the moment. It's wasted. Chen Pingan simply stopped breathing and took out 2 pots of glutinous fermented rice from his hometown, one for each with his husband. The old Shutsai smiled and asked, I still don't learn this sword technique well. Why don't you ask Ning girl for advice? Chen Pingan said honestly, Sir, it's not that I have no face to learn this swordsmanship from Ning Yao. It's just like me. I don't need to learn from someone, and I don't have to be hypocritical with Ning Yao. Besides, I practiced boxing back then. I still spread out the fist score on the table, learned the words from Ning Yao, and solved the fist thinking. But I don't want Ning Yao to think too much, for example, to make her feel that her sword practice is too easy and smooth, but when I get to my side, it is hard. In fact, there is no hardship. To be honest, practicing swords is much easier than learning boxing. The old scholar said, "It's just in comparison, it's not easy." Then the old scholar stroked his beard and smiled, and couldn't help but admire, "This is old kind. Just talk about the love between men and women, and talk about Hugin, especially the ability to apply what you have learned." Several of my direct disciples, Cui Yang, Zhuo Zhuo, Jun Qian, and Shao Qi, I am afraid that altogether, they are not as good as the close disciple next to him. Chen Pingan suddenly said with guilt, "It seems that I always let my husband work so hard, but I don't let him worry about an effort." The old scholar took a sip of her wine and chuckled softly, "Say some silly things, don't say anything in the future, or your husband will be angry." When I was angry, I couldn't help but want to curse at Zhuo Zhuo and Jun Qian. Now these two are not around, one is at the site of the Great Wall of Jinqi, and the other ran to the Qingming world to see Bai Yi. It is even more uncomfortable to curse. The old scholar turned his eyes, coughed, and whispered, "Peace, girl Ning, I don't know why, she has spoken, let us go to your senior brother's house to relive the past." Chen Pingan turned his head, his eyes lamented, "Sir, what the is going on? No matter how hard you work for the disciple, you can't do this." The old scholar was even more worried, and angrily raised the hip flask, Go one, go one." Chen Pingan complained, "Walk away with a hammer, and Mr. Drink it himself." The old scholar gave a hello, and suddenly said, "By the way, be safe, my husband was just at the inn and gave you the job offer." He turned his head and found his husband standing outside the door, not crossing the threshold for a long time. Chen Pingan stopped and waited quietly for her husband. The old scholar looked inside the door, did not move for a long time, and muttered to himself, "Since the luck is so bad and I became my first apprentice, then the husband will not say that you have worked hard. There are some things that the husband has done wrong." The deceased inside the door, the old man outside, the sages and sages have been lonely since ancient times. In the end, the old scholar did not walk into the Yun building, but sat on the courtyard stone bench outside the book building. Chen Pingan took some books from the book building and put them on the table. The old Xiuzai was drinking wine and slowly flipping through the books. In fact, they are all the works of old talents who have not yet become Wensheng, so they are mostly first editions, but they appear to be rough and not sophisticated enough, but the pages are unusually clean, like new books, and the title page of each book does not have any. There is no narration in the book collection of a poster reader. Chen Pingan sat on the threshold of the book building, breathing out, closing his eyes and resting, only the sound of Mr. Flipping in his ears. Finally, the old scholar turned to a page, which happened to be the content of the unmasking chapter. The old scholar closed the book and only put the book in his sleeve. There is nothing to say for a night, only the bright moon will go away, the day will rise, and the world will be bright. Sort of Coming Chapter 834. Chen Pingan said goodbye to her husband and left the alley early in the morning. Thinking about the letter of appointment, the husband sent it, and Ning Yao accepted it. Chen Pingan was in a good mood. The old monk who was in charge of guarding the alleys put down the white jade dojo again in the alleys. Apart from practicing in this life, the old man had no other preferences anyway. Lu Jiao really just simply likes to cultivate the Tao. As for the realm or something, don't force it, love will not come anyway, Lao Tzu is not used to you. It's just weird. Could that apprentice be struck by lightning if he didn't protect the way yesterday? It's rare to have no bluffing and bluffing over there to play those martial arts styles, so you can breathe all night, very diligent, use the river cart transport technique of gold liquid to return the blood, and run the small Zhou Tian over and over again. It is about sincere. Because of the spirit, it's kind of like a thing. In addition to his own practice this night, Lu Hua's spiritual flow turned to the sky, with his visual magical powers, like an immortal traveling on a crane in a vast world of his own unique golden jade jungle, out of the white crane under the Jiang Palace, on the Chongqing Bridge, watch the water and enlighten the Tao. The old monk also had to pay attention to Zhao Duanming's circulation route, so that he could select defects afterwards and help his disciples find out and fill vacancies. Chen Pingan stopped near the entrance of the alley, waited a moment, bent his fingers to knock on the door, tapped lightly, and smiled. "Master Lu, stop by the door, don't you mind?" When the knock on the door sounded in the alley, Lu Jia just converged his mind, and his practice came to an end. The old Yuanying was deeply moved. This young man, worthy of the embroidered tigers junior, has a really poisonous vision. Seeing his own practice situation so realistically, the old monk got up from the futon, displayed his magical powers, opened a small door to the Baiyu dojo and said, "Please come in. There is an extra word of invitation. It is because your husband is Wencheng's face. It has nothing to do with whether the sword fairy is not the sword fairy, the hidden official is not hidden." However, in just one day, first the young hidden official came, Ning Yao's sharp sword, and when Xing came by, Lu Hua felt that his usual deserted path of practice was rarely so lively. "It's just that I was thinking about finding that guy for a drink. Isn't he already drinking at this moment, so I can only toast 3 glasses with the old coachman." Chen Pingan stepped into it, glanced at the young man who was still practicing, and asked in his heart, "Is the old master going to wait until Duanming has entered the Golden Core realm, and then teach a superior thunder method that is naturally compatible with his numerology?" Lu Jia looked weird and wanted to nod her head very much. He slapped a swollen face to fill up a fat man with a young man who was not confused, but the old man's conscience is not relieved. It doesn't matter if he loses face. He sighed, "There is a fart thunder fa Dao Ju, I'm so sad." Chen Pingan was surprised. "With the background of the Zhao family in Tianshui, can't you find a labor rectification?" Lu Jia shook his head. In the past few years, the Zhao family only found a few secrets of the thunder method. It is 1,000 miles away from the authentic 5 thunders of Longhu Mountain. They dare to give it, and I dare not teach it. He is really a sword immortal who doesn't know the price of oil, salt, firewood and rice. Lei Fa is known as the ancestor of 10,000 laws on the mountain. How can this secret record of true law be so easy to get, and it is not a matter of money at all? Beiping's of the immortal family, there are not many people who specialize in thunder method, and there is no one close to the word authentic. Even the great heavenly monarch of the gods, Qi Zhen, dare not say that he is good at thunder method. Chen Pingan thought for a while, and said, "I'm going to take a trip to the divine continent of China. I have a friend on the mountain. He is a nobleman from the heavenly master's mansion. I have made an appointment to go to Longhu Mountain as a guest. I will see if I can fight for it." She made up a decent secret book, but this matter cannot be guaranteed. Lu Jia frowned and said, "For no reason. Why are you so invigorating and mobilizing people to give a piece of Tianda incense to Duanming for free? Why, you are trying to win over Tianshui Zhao as an ally of Luopashan in Dali." Chen Pingan shook his head and smiled, "It's really going to happen. I accidentally missed the secret book of thunder method in Renyuniyun Tower. It's a thanks to Master Lu for helping to take care of the brother's house. Master Lu just needs to do it. One thing is to conceal this from the Zhao family in Tianshui. In short, it has nothing to do with me. Then I will preach for Duanming on Xin. Lu Jia will be skeptical, it's that simple, really nothing to calculate." Chen Pingan asked back, "I can't believe in Chen Pingan, who meets in a peaceful water, but Master Lu Xian can't believe in my husband." Lu Jia laughed dumbly, hesitated, and nodded. This kid has moved out of Wenqing. This is feasible. Confucian scholars, the most important context in orthodoxy, cannot make any jokes. It's just that the old cultivator suddenly recovered his senses and said with a smile, "Good boy, if you lie to me, if you don't do anything, you can earn a good impression from me, right?" Chen Pingan deliberately looked puzzled and said, "What do you say?" Lu Jia burst into laughter, pointed his finger at the young man who thought he was a fool, and clicked, "Even if you have a good relationship with Tianshifu, a Confucian disciple who is not in Longhushan Daomai after all, I am afraid it is a big day." "Master, I don't dare to preach your Five Thunders real method without authorization. You have just said it yourself. You can only use the opportunity of reading books to piece together and touch your conscience. Can a cheat be better than the one found by the Zhao family in Tianshui? I don't find a good reason, because it leaks on all sides and is untenable." The old monk stopped talking immediately, and saw that the sword fairy smiled and raised his hand. Five thunders gathered in the palm of good fortune, and the Taoism was loftily fahey. Lu Jia looked intently, looked and looked again, nodded lightly, and said as usual, "The little master is a master of thunder. He is worthy of being a disciple of the sage Wen, the brother of the embroidered tiger, who has learned from the best, cast a furnace, admire and admire. It's settled, I thank you first, and only waited for the little master to accidentally lose this secret book in the house, and then I picked it up by accident. Just." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "I will carefully write down all the matters needing attention in practicing this method, and carefully append the end of the book. The text will only be more cumbersome and detailed than the main text. The realm of the old fairy is placed there, and I will protect the Tao afterwards. Teaching the FA is absolutely not a problem." Lu Jia was a little embarrassed. Chen Pingan said, "I have to bother with the old immortal teacher. Help me and Tianshui's patriarch Zhao family to ask for a picture and write the Zhao family motto." Of course it has nothing to do with Chen Pingan. Being able to be called here to guard the alley by the senior, Chen Pingan was sure that Lu Jia must be a tight-lipped person. So there was no worry that the old monk would miss his mouth when he was on the Zhao family in Tianshui. Lu Jia breathed a sigh of relief, and asked for calligraphy and painting, a trivial matter. Even if he carried a basket to the door, it was nothing. It was for the face of Master Zhao, who wrote beautifully. The Tianshui Zhao family, who was described as Ma Shi Zhao by the Dali officialdom, has a very literary family motto. Chen Pingan is especially fond of the few words. The weather should be clear and high, the knowledge should be profound and far-reaching, the standing should be strong and sincere, and the color should be suitable. Ruizhuang. In fact, after Chen Pingan came to Beijing this time and met Zhao Duanming, he wanted to ask for a copy of the family motto handwritten by the patriarch of the Zhao family. It should not be hung in his study and can be given to the little warm tree. It's just that the situation in the capital is still unclear. Chen Pingan had planned to wait until things happened before opening up with Zhao Duanming. "It's all right now, you can get it without spending money." The old monk was suddenly taken aback. Chen Pingan turned his head and looked at him. Zhao Duanming's mind was immersed in the world, and there was a flow of air that echoed each other, so that the spirit of the whole person was fading out, and people were like mountains. Feiyun is hovering, there are signs of lightning and thunder. Chen Pingan glanced at Lu La, who was taken aback, nodded immediately, and said that you just protect Duanming. Chen Pingan stepped forward to Zhao Duanming's side, stomping lightly, the closed-eyed young man sitting cross-legged on the futon, and then floated into the air. Chen Pingan raised a hand and gently stroked the young man's head to help Zhao Duanming calm his mind. The palm of the five thunder-crowded hands turned into together, gently tapped the center of the young man's eyebrows to calm him, and instantly rise to the top a state of sleep. Lu Hua's eyes widened and his expression was unbelievable. He saw that the surroundings of the disciple's head were magnificent and magnificent, like a mysterious picture of the world being Taoized. The sun and the moon were suspended in the sky, countless stars revolving. I saw that wearing a blue shirt, from the bright galaxy, with my heart, I picked out a golden light lingering and thundering pocket star, and then with that little hand, as if as a longevity bridge, slowly rolling into the young man's eyebrows, the star that was blurred by Taoism, within Zhao Duanming's personal small world, following the aura of Xiao Zhou Tian, revolving in an orderly manner. The young man was originally scattered everywhere a few strands of the essence of Taoism that even I didn't even notice. If I get an edict, it will come in an instant, and I will worship the ancient star that seems to be suspended in the sky. Chen Pingan lightly patted the young man's forehead, and the young man brought the futon to the ground again. Lu Jia asked cautiously, Chen Pingan, are you a great cultivator of the Ascension realm? Chen Pingan smiled and said, I am not, my wife is. Lu Jia endured, but still couldn't hold back. He asked the biggest question in his heart, Chen Pingan, why did you kidnap Ning Yao? Chen Pingan adjusted his clothes, shook his sleeves, smiled and said nothing. Isn't this obvious? It depends on appearance and tolerance. Lu Jia was stunned for a long time, jokingly, are you a tailor? Chen Pingan smiled and said goodbye, and strode out of the alley. The young man who had been kept in the dark slowly recovered his senses. After opening his eyes, he stood up and jumped a few times, only feeling extremely refreshed. Finding the master sitting on the futon drinking, Zhao Duanming squatted over, smelling the wine to relieve gluttony. Lu Jia smiled and said, it was not clear before why the national teacher asked me to wait patiently, saying that I should owe the salary first, and then someone will come here to pay. The world is messy, twists and turns, and it's not real, but it depends on the general quality of people's hearts. Lu Ka is quite accurate. Zhao Duanming said, Master is embarrassed to accept my brother Chen's money. Master, of course you are very strong about practicing and preaching. Otherwise, you won't be able to teach me such an apprentice, but you really have to learn from me when it comes to humanity and sophistication. Lu Jia smiled and stopped speaking, and turned his head to look into the alley. The former national teacher Cui Huang had been here year after year, day after day, alone, but he never felt lonely. The worry of the heart is like a tiger's tail, and it is involved in the spring ice. Now there are more juniors, walking in the alleys. It is as clear as the sun and the moon, and as far away as the journey of the stars. It seems that the sword fairy in Qingshan, although young, is not a chess piece, but is located in the capital, where the mountains and rivers of a country are the chessboard. Invite your opponent to take a seat and try it. The old monk thought about it again, quite proud. The janitor myself, Chen Pingan, Ning Yao, and Wen Xing can barely be regarded as stopping the three. Who can compare to it? Lu Jia coughed, handed over a jug of wine, and smiled, Duanming, drink. The teenager patted off Master's hand and laughed and said, Master is talking about laughing, what kind of wine to drink? The disciple is young, but he can't stand the smell of wine. Anyway, only a few steps away, when he arrived at the inn, Chen Pingan was not in a hurry to find Ning Yao. He chatted with the shopkeeper first, and after chatting, he asked about the girl. The old man yelled, the surname is Chen, don't eat the bowl and look at the pot. Hurry up and put away the crooked mind. Besides, did you kid take the wrong medicine? My girl looks pretty, but she doesn't feel better. Girl Ning. Chen Pingan smiled and tentatively said, the shopkeeper, what do you think? Who am I? The shopkeeper has seen the 3 teachers and 9 Lu who go north and south, and you have long developed a pair of golden eyes. I really can't see it. I just think she is good. The old shopkeeper laughed angrily, stop it, stop it. Could it be that I'm going to learn the art with you, a little girl's family, what kind of martial arts skills? Let me talk more about this. To talk about the martial arts in the market, let alone sell that dogskin plaster with guns or smashing boulders on his chest to earn some hard money. Although the young man in front of him is mostly a quagmire who lives here, he wants saying that you let your daughter go to learn martial arts with someone. Isn't it just a few days after you get calloused? How can you marry someone? It hurts to think about it. The most worried thing is that stupid girl female. When I was young, I dreamed of being a heroine of the world. Fortunately, there was a time when the two gangsters of Yi Chi Lane and Cheer Street fought in groups. It was a fierce fight, and the bricks were broken a lot. I saw my girls sullenly ran home. The ordinary master passed by, he would definitely not take a second look. This decapitated road will only turn around and leave. Chen Pingon knew about a few songs who went out of the city last night to travel long distances. Their figure started from this place. Later, when they returned to the capital, they also settled here. Most likely, this is their place of cultivation. As soon as Chen Pingon was about to knock on the door, he frowned slightly, and his figure fluttered backwards and fell 10 feet away. There was a female ghost monk in the Golden Core realm, her figure fictitious, from the door with the painted door god. A flew out. Chen Pingon glanced, and found that it was the female ghost next to the young Yuaning Jinshu, mostly Song Su and Guling, but they belonged to different mountains. Is this to discuss the Taoism? Still asked Jian Wenquan. It was just that she saw her figure spinning, her colorful clothes fluttering, her teeth and claws flaring, and she seemed to have nothing to do with her, and her cannibalistic eyes and coveting face. What happened? Chen Pingan's hands were sleeved, and he just moved sideways to avoid the female ghost Yufeng's figure, like a colorful female ghost spinning half a circle, spreading his arms, about to hug the blue shirt. Are you endless? Chen Pingan didn't turn his head, just raised an elbow and slammed it back, hitting the female ghost in front of the door. The ghost fell to the ground so dizzy, she sat up, pulled out a kerchief from her sleeve with 2 fingers, wiped the corner of her eyes, and started to cry. Chen Pingon turned his head, frowned and asked, "What's the matter?" The female ghost was full of vigor and did not speak, but floated towards Chen Pingon suddenly, without murderous intent, as if she was blindly stalking. Chen Pingon always put his hands in the sleeves, raised a foot, kicked her forehead, and the female ghost hit the wall. Wrong. It's some kind of weird blindfold that can cover the mind. In short, seeing is imaginary. Chen Pingon squinted, sticking out his sleeves, with 5 fingers like hooks, grabbing the head of the female ghost, pressing down quickly, and smashing it to the ground, twisting his toes slightly, and covering the road with martial arts, not allowing her to escape. Then she poked her heart with a tiptoe and made a bang. The poor girl ghost's figure in colored clothes, like a rag, wiped all the alleys, and then the woman's body in colored clothes suddenly expanded and hovered over near the entrance of the alley. It was like a huge painted lattice picture on the wall. Chen Pingon reminded, "It's almost enough." On the walls on both sides of an alley, the sky was dim and dark in an instant, and countless female ghost heads were protruding, but they were not stern, but smiled like a flower, like the infatuated woman who finally saw the lover return home. Don't forget the original, live. Chen Pingon stretched out his hand. The boy hurriedly took out a small summer money that he had kept all the time from his sleeve and handed it to the other party, apologizing, "Mr. Chin, I spent the small summer money back then." Chen Pingon said, "I borrow money to repay, and I can't talk about interest." The boy grinned, knowing that Mr. Chin was joking. Chen Pingon put away the small summer money, twisted his wrist, and produced a green bamboo stick, which is the hiking stick of the literati and gentlemen for mountaineering. On the top of the hiking stick, there is a 2-character inscription, Ji Yuan. The young man held a hiking stick in his arms and was not good at words, but silently bowed to Mr. Chin to thank him. Next moment, Before the young man raised his head and stood up, he was instantly alarmed. In fact, not only Ghost Cun, but also the female ghost in the courtyard, Han Zhou-jin and Yu Yu at the door, and Song Su gathered in a nearby courtyard, everyone found themselves in the cloud. The formation master Han Zhou-jin had already sacrificed the ruins of the fairy palace, and then there was only a sword light between the sky and the earth, breaking the sky and the earth, forcibly breaking the mountain and water restriction of an ancient Tongbai blessed land, only to see that Chen Pingon grabbed it with one hand. Gaen's bun, holding Go Kun's neck with one hand, the female ghost Gaen's aura was suppressed by her fist, almost stagnated, and a little bit of wind and grass. The natal chi house belonging to the 5 elements has the heartbreaking pain, as for Go Cun has fainted. The most troublesome part is that Gaen and Go Cun are lightly stabbed by Fei Jin at once. Jian Qi penetrated into the small world in the body. The sword immortal in Qing Shan, who did not say hello, looked around, took a few glances at the aura of the avenue of the ancient immortal dojo, then stared at Han Zhou-jin and smiled and said, "I'm a little bit strange, how did you kill back then?" The monster army accounted for the Jade Innocent Realm, attacked and beheaded? No, it's just to give you the head, right? Chen Pingon said to himself, or, as long as there is a shortage of manpower, the 11 of you can only be considered as a mess. It's okay, just come in. Besides, there is no need for you to plan to kill others in the world. Good thing, the debt will be repaid one day, and that's it now. The Yin and Yang family Qi practitioner was about to pinch the Dao Ju and use an extremely mysterious natal magical power. At the price of 1 level of self-fall, he helped the 11 people to return to the before and make preparations early. As a result, there was a sword light directly above his head. Yuan Huajing appeared as Sui Lin's guardian, offering a natal flying sword, using the flying sword against the flying sword, cutting off the sword light, never thought that the 5-element family practitioner was around him. The sword light lit up countless, directly stirring up that slender thread of time. Chen Pingon left Go Cun and Gaen in his hands, and walked to Dao Lu Geling in one step. This Taoist priest actually chose to directly explode the golden core and Yuaning and replace them with ordinary earth immortal monks. The end of the elimination. Chen Pingon, full of fists like a waterfall, unscathed, walked out of this slightly chaotic battlefield at random, stretched out his hand to hold down Yu Yu of the military cultivator and punched close to him, gently pulled closer to him, and then turned around. With a heart-to-heart elbow, Yu Yu vomited blood and flew out dozens of feet. His figure flashed. Just about to lift his foot and step on it, the corner of his eye found that Yu Yu was actually far away. It was a bit interesting. In the small world of the caged finches, what I saw in my eyes still received interference. It seems that the female ghost, the legendary painter profiler, on the mountain, was still hiding a lot of clumsy in the alley. So the next moment, in the eyes of 11 people, the heavens and the earth are tilted, twisted and upside down to varying degrees. Like a world, cut into countless realms by the master. The female ghost Gaen was about to make a move, and her vision was full of sword light, and dozens of long swords were nailed into her body and the colorful clothes in an instant. Ghost Cun, who was supposed to have been sleeping for a long time, suddenly opened his eyes, and Chen Pingon stepped on the center of the mouth and passed out again. At the same time, Chen Pingon squinted the little novice monk and smiled, as if saying that it was you. Wearing a blue shirt as if stepping out of the door, volleyed into the air, appeared behind the little novice monk, wrapped his arms around the little monk's neck, and supported the little monk's chin with one hand, but Chen Pingon hesitated and chose to stop temporarily and pat. He patted the little monk's head and smiled, "Be careful later." With together, he drew a circle, and around the little novice monk, a golden thunder pond appeared. Chen Pingon changed the battlefield, shook his sleeves, and hung the talisman like 2 galaxies, besieging the 5 elementalists. Han Zhou-jin was shocked, and he didn't know when he actually lost the chi traction with the Xianfu ruins. Chen Pingan looked around, raised his hand casually, patted the flying swords of Yuan Huajing and Song Su, and said, knowing that you have a lot of back players, but it is useless. If you don't have a chance to use it, you have already lost. With a flick of his finger, he blasted a fragment of the golden body at the Yin-Yang family Qi practitioner. Chen Pingan said, it's a compensation. Let's go back. The time reversed for a moment, and the 11 people returned to their respective positions, but with the support of the little novices' dharma and supernatural powers, everyone still remembers. Sui Lin sat down on the ground with a pale face, but the golden body fragment in his hand could make up for himself. There is still a surplus in the loss of Taoism. Half of the monks were not convinced, and the remaining half had lingering fears. The sword immortal in Qingshan with the most fierce shot seemed to be the only one who was not affected by the long river of time. He was the first to return to the place of the inn, standing in the corridor with his arms and sleeves, and smiled with the boy who was still bowing his head, scared. The boy was dull and speechless, still holding a mountain stick, got up and scratched his head, then shook his head. Mr. Chen, I learned it. Chen Pingan whispered, cultivating on the mountain, the clouds are treacherous, the higher the climb, the greater the mountain breeze, so be careful in the future. Then Chen Pingan laughed, of course it's not that you have to be careful of my sneak attacks in the future. Today's shot is an exception. Chen Pingan began to help the 11 people to resume the fight, and then gave some suggestions. As for whether they listened, it didn't matter. If they weren't the monks carefully selected by seniors and spent a lot of money to cultivate them, Chen Pingan would be too lazy today. Then a large piece of golden body fragments of ancient gods is not money. Chen Pingan finally asked in his heart, Go Si Yuan, what happens when I see someone who eats dog meat now? Go Si Yuan was silent for a moment, raised his head, and said frankly with Mr. Qin, I still feel uncomfortable, so if you listen to Mr. Qin, you must become the national teacher of that small country in the future and order that no one is allowed to eat dog meat in a country. Chen Pingan nodded, take it slowly. Chen Pingan was about to leave this fairy home inn. Unexpectedly, the female ghost had the courage to approach a few steps, blinking a pair of big eyes. Master Qin, let's go now, they'll see you off. Chen Pingan angrily smiled and said, Is it greasy or crooked? Let's talk about it. What exactly are you drawing? She looked a little shy. Learning from Han Zhoujin, she was upset at the sight, and couldn't hold it. Han Zijin's face flushed, and she became angry and said, Gayan, clean your mouth. Chen Pingan was speechless and passed away in a flash. Temple of Fire. Under the flower shed, Aunt Fong squinted her eyes, came uninvited, and entered without knocking on the door. Who are they? The old coachman said straightforwardly, the situation forces you to answer Chen Ping's 3 questions. What do you think that kid will ask? I prepared early. Don't shy away. If it wasn't for you to make trouble, I wouldn't have to suffer more from those 2 swords. Aunt Fong smiled, Chen Pingan will definitely ask who you are first. The old coachman said, what else? Aunt Fong continued, the Broken Life porcelain, did you participate in it? The old coachman nodded, this is a good answer, no shit. Aunt Fong Tut said, you have a conscience, right? You have bet on the Ma family in Xinghua Lane a long time ago. The old coachman did not hide, I am most optimistic about Ma Kushuan, there is nothing to hide, but what the Ma family did has nothing to do with me. Neither instigated them nor helped to erase the traces afterwards. Aunt Fong thought for a moment. As for the 3rd question, there are too many things he might ask, it's hard to guess. Such as, for example, in the refining of Li Zhu Dongshan's natal porcelain, who is the instigator? Do you want to answer? How? The old coachman took out a small porcelain bottle and opened it wide, surrounded by purple air, sniffed it lightly, and suddenly he was full of golden light, flowing around his body, mending his injuries. The body of the gods, being cut by the sword repair, is one thing good, that is, there is no remaining sword energy, and the aftermath of the sword energy will be washed away by the long river of time. As long as the golden body does not break on the spot, no matter how severe the injury is afterwards, there will be more cracks. Can make up and repair the golden body. The old coachman was silent for a moment, a little helpless. Tell Ning Yao, as long as it is a question I don't want to answer, I can ask Chen Ping'an to change it. Aunt Feng smiled and said, that's it. The old coachman sullenly said, the little lady gave an explanation, but there are only 3 things. The old coachman suddenly raised his head, you old lady, don't cheat me anymore. Aunt Feng joked, if it really doesn't work, it's okay to die for the Taoist friend and not to die for the poor. Let's show the roots and feet of that person and Chen Ping'an. The old coachman shook his head, the 4 most difficult ghosts on the mountain, in fact, don't mess with anyone. The other 2 people behind the scenes, one of them is a dragon breeder from the line of Fulong. There is another, from the land of Yinyang family. The one who is in the bright and the dark is the capital trainer who was beaten to death by Song Changjing indiscriminately. The one in the dark, the site of the old 5 mountains of Dei, is all from this person. Handwriting. These few of them are immortal. Under the fence of the Lizhu cave, of course they have their own needs. The old ancestor of Fulongshi is betting on the Dali Song family, and by the way, suppressing the luck of the Liu family on Fulu Street. As for the anti-Feng, apart from protecting the road, it was just getting involved everywhere. For example, Chao Han and Yuan Xian were brought out of the Lizhu cave, and the pair of future civil and martial arts were given to the Great Court. Only with that ZTE, the Song clan of Dei would not be cut off from Guizhou, and was easily annexed by the LV family, which was the former overlord of Dei. Compared to Aunt Feng and the old coachman, the Yinyang monk from the Liu family of Middle-earth was hiding behind the scenes, threading needles and leads all day, and acting the most sneaky, but he was able to make sense and was within the rules. The old coachman said for no reason, within Jiazi, first come first served. Ma Kushuan actually has a chance. It means that the illusory and ubiquitous awe-inspiring luck has broken several continents, mountains and rivers, and the great monks of the 2 worlds have fallen so many, which one is not the one who is the original one, but they are all returned to the world. This it was like an invisible battle. Earlier, the sword fairy embryos of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, as well as the Baijian fairy of Tuyua Mountain, actually belonged to the imminent warfare, and they all rose to the occasion. Later, the sword fairy Su Hao, the Baidi city Gu Kan and his ilk, one by one turned out to be born, rising extremely fast, so in the past 100 years, it has been a great year for cultivators, and there is nothing to miss. Unless Wen Hai, who had gone to the sky, was thorough enough to be able to return to the world, and war would start again. The old coachman glanced at the sky and sighed, I have to say, this thoroughness is indeed remarkable. Aunt Feng smiled and said, it is the way for monks to raise Tibet. The old coachman frowned and said, the merit is hard to come by. There is something wrong with Chen Ping'an's brain. Aunt Feng shook her head, unwilling to say more about it. The so-called human nature, in the final analysis, is to like to fight with yourself. As a god, he is born to be able to classify into different categories, not bad, happy, angry, sad, and then subdivided into hundreds of boundaries, everywhere in order. Regarding this matter, the saints of the 3 religions all have many solutions. For example, the Buddhist Taoists all praise the observance of one law. More recently, only the old scholar who restored the temple of Confucianism is already in the Book of Sages. Exploring the heavenly secrets, for example, the mortal observations are suspicious, the center is uncertain, the outer objects are unclear, the bright moon travels at night, and when you see its shadow, you think that ghosts, the heart is the king of the shape, and the lord of the gods is also needed. Self-restraint, self-deprivation, self-restraint, this is the essence of the old scholar's unmasking chapter. Therefore, at the inn earlier, the old scholar seemed unintentional and casual, and mentioned his unmasking chapter. At that time, Aunt Foam withdrew a gust of breeze and stopped eavesdropping on the conversation. The so-called rumors in the world were really not because she deliberately went to the auditorium, it was really due to her own destiny. Chen Pingan returned on the same road and approached the inn. She just happened to ran into the girl and went out. When she saw the guy, the girl turned around, ran back to the inn, and walked around the counter. She hid beside her dad, and then pretended to be ready to order. Chen Pingan crossed the threshold without squinting. Suddenly stopped, turned and walked out of the inn, to the alley house. The big queen mother finally came. At the counter, the girl whispered, "Father, did I wrong him?" The old shopkeeper said in a deep voice, "No, this kid is in the world, with many eyes, he is trying to catch him." Chen Pingan was quite helpless. Walking slowly in the street, and nothing happened, Chen Pingan began to babble casually. The ancient bamboo horse hit the waist of the skirt, Shuma listened to the sound of selling flowers, the lotus charmed the fish, and the screens complained about the autumn of the jade. Clouds across the river cannot send water boats, the magpie bridge immortal sees the pot in the sky, mountain ghosts sing Wanyankin. The weaving craft and the lingluo material are not immortal things. There was nothing strange about it, but she brought a string of handmade chains and 12 snow-white beads, which was bright and lovely. There is no one around, so naturally no one dared to spy on this place without authorization. Nanzhan, the most powerful woman in Aquarius, turned sideways and gave a blessing, graceful and romantic. She smiled sweetly, met Mr. Qin. Chen Pingan stopped, clasped his fists and smiled, "I have seen the Queen Mother." One more glance at the woman's hand ring, it's worthy of the name, because every bead is a spiritual bead contained in Shenhazi, which can make people enlighten and remember the past, and there are things in this life. Forgetting, you only need to rub this pearl to get a better understanding. Almost all the ancestors in the world will find this pearl hard, and welcome the old ancestors who have been reincarnated by soldiers back to the mountain, and give this pearl to help the reincarnation. Getting up to the world of the last life and practicing 2 things. Nan Yan glanced at the place where the blue shirt stopped, not far or near, she just happened to be able to talk with her without looking up. Seems to be a great face to the other party. Nan Yengue is the Queen Mother, and she is still willing to call her a gentleman respectfully, and one will vote for her husband, be considerate, and don't bully her small. Nan Yen smiled and said, "Mr. Qin, why don't we go to the house and chat slowly?" Chen Pingan nodded and said, "The Queen Mother is the master, so she is naturally the guest." The two walked in the alley together, each close to the root of the wall. Looking ahead, Nanzhan said with emotion, "It is a great fortune to turn the tide together." Mr. Qin traveled far to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and made great achievements. On the sea, the Dragon King will be killed again at the head of the city, and he will serve as the last hidden official as a foreigner. This feat, several worlds, has not been seen in 10,000 years, and I believe that there will be no more in the future. Dali has Mr. Qin, it is true fortunately. Chen Ping An's hands were sleeved, and he slowly said, "The storm is wicked, and the grassy spirit is awkward, that's all." Nan Yen was silent for a moment. Approaching the courtyard gate of the mansion, she suddenly asked, "Dare to ask Mr. Wenxing now, but he is meditating in the mansion. Will it disturb Wenxing's reading?" Chen Pingan pushed open the courtyard door, shook his head and said, "Mr. is not here." Nan Yen asked again, "Will Ning Jianxian be wronged by staying at the ordinary inn? Do you need me to arrange accommodation?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "The Queen Mother's kindness is appreciated, but it's not necessary." The two sides settled in a courtyard, and Nan Yen smiled and said, Mr. Chin is drinking or drinking tea. Chen Pingon leaned against the stone table with sleeves in both hands, turned his head and smiled. Should we talk about business first? Nan Yen smiled and said, I wonder what Mr. Chen is calling me over this time. Chen Ping'an put out his sleeve with one hand. Bring it. Nan Yen looked blank. Mr. Chen is going to ask for something. Chen Pingon kept that posture and smiled and said, it's right for things to return to their original owners. Otherwise, it's too arrogant and rebellious to beg the Queen Mother for a life. Nan Yen looked around and said in doubt, return to the original owner? Dare to ask Mr. Chin, half of Aquarius Island, what is not my dolly? Chen Pingon put his hands away, smiled and said, don't give it, forget it. Nan Yen seemed to be a little surprised by the other party's refreshment. She patted her forehead. Remember, did Mr. Chin mean that life porcelain fragment? Chen Pingon said, the Queen Mother is out of the house this time. Her hands are not worn for nothing. Nan Zan raised a hand, revealing a piece of snow-white wrist. Why don't you give it to Mr. Chin? Maybe it's useful, it can relieve your urgent need. Chen Pingon narrowed his eyes and remained silent. Somewhere in the house, there is a faint dragon cry on the wall, which is touching. Brother right and left, if it is reasonable and useful, what to do with sword training? Unconsciously, the woman lowered her arm and placed it gently on the table. The beads touched the stone and rolled away slightly, creaking. She stared at the side face of the man in the green shirt and smiled. Mr. Chen's jade, the world is really extraordinary. The world does not know that Mr. Chen's end is full of vitality. No one in the past, he is better than Chao Ci, and he still does not know the jade and two flying swords of the hermit. In fact, it is also shocking to the world. Others think of Mr. Chen's practice, swordsmanship and boxing on the top of the two mountains are too unbelievable, but I think Mr. Chen's clumsy hiding is the true housekeeping skill. Seeing that Chen Pingon was unwilling to speak, she continued to say, that piece of broken porcelain must be returned. As Mr. Chen said, it's reasonable to return to the original owner. Why don't I give it? It's just when to give it. I don't think I need to worry too much. This piece of broken porcelain has been left on my side for many years. It is different to help Mr. Chin keep it safe and secure. In that case, Mr. Chin, why rush it for a while? Nanzhan stretched out his palm and gently brushed it across the tabletop. I can replace your Majesty the Emperor, assure you that we are willing to use the Song family background and the great power to help Mr. Chin ascend to the fairyland, the ascent to the ascendant. Bottleneck. At that moment, Mr. Chen has become the leader of the immortal family on Yizhou Mountain, just like Chen Chunan in South Pisuzhou, Wolongzhen in Beiju Luzhou, and Lu Ju Bao in Ai Zhou. Then a piece of broken porcelain was offered with both hands as a small congratulatory gift to wish Mr. Chen every success. During this period, the court of Dali had nothing to ask for Mr. Chen and Luopa Mountain. Chen Pingon turned his head and smiled and asked, there is such a good thing in the world. Nothing is required, just lying down every day to enjoy the blessing. I am about to mistake my last name for Song. Nanzhan was full of vigor, staring at that one, and said, Mr. Chin was joking. I just said that it is a blessing that Dolly has Mr. Chin. If you don't know how to cherish this, Nanzhan, as Song's daughter-in-law, ashamed of the Song ancestors in Taimiao. Chen Pingon smiled and said, in case the Empress Dowager has the face to go to worship incense and sacrifice, it would be a bit embarrassing if the sages and escorts of the Song dynasty's imperial temple are not seen. Nan Yen covered her mouth and smiled and said, Mr. Chen has indeed changed a lot. Compared with the taciturn when he was a teenager, he is now very funny in speech. Chen Pingon nodded. Long Jun is dead, half dead in vain, has gone to Li Zhen, and I have been with me for many years. There are men and women of all ages and everyone feels the same way. Nan Yan patted herself on her chest, and said with lingering fear, "Mr. Chin, don't scare me. A woman of the family not only has long hair and short knowledge, but also has little courage." Chen Pingon stretched out a palm towards the door. "Then don't give it away, lest you scare the queen to death and you can't afford it." Nan Yan stood up, bit her lip, and said with a sad expression in her eyes, "Then I am really gone." Chen Pingon smiled and stood up. "It's better to send off the queen mother and do the best of the landlord's friendship." But Nan Zan sat back down. Before taking the seat, she bent her knees slightly, leaned forward, her hands drooped, and then gently stroked the arc. The silk was smooth as water. After sitting down, she raised her neck high and smiled charmingly. "I'm joking with Mr. Chin. You can't just allow Mr. Chin to be humorous, and Nan Zan is not allowed to say something angry, right?" She said for no reason. "Mr. Chen's craftsmanship is very good, bamboo sticks, bookcases, and chairs are all stylish." Back then, Nan Zan was on the riverside shop and I had learned it. It's just that before Nan Zan finished speaking, her neck was slightly cold, and the blue shirt was not visible in her vision, but there was a scabbard against her neck. Chen Pingon smiled and asked, "Just count." After a crosscut, "How tall is the queen mother?" The woman in the palace costume shook her head. "Nan Yan is just a little golden pill. With Mr. Chen's swordsmanship, he really wants to kill people wherever nonsense is needed. No more bluffing." Sure enough, Chen Ping's twisted his wrist and the long sword swept back to a wall of a wing. Chen Pingon takes his seat again. The woman smiled slightly. "What is the southern emperor and the northern Ingguan, but so?" Just suddenly flashed. Nan Zan's head flew high on the spot. She suddenly got up, grabbed the head with both hands, and quickly put it back to her neck. Her palms rushed to wipe the wound, but she turned her head slightly and it hurt. She couldn't help being angry. Said Chen Pingon, "Do you really dare to kill me?" Chen Pingon took out a jug of wine from his sleeve, and then took out a flower cup that was easily handled by the Confucian temple. He poured himself a glass of wine and drank for himself. "If you don't dare, don't you dare." Nan Zan stood in place and sneered, "I really bet that you dare not kill me. Today's words are left here. You must wait patiently for yourself to become the bottleneck of the Ascension realm, and I will return your broken tiles, or killing me today is tantamount to rebellion. Tomorrow there will be a big Li cavalry besieging Luopa Mountain. The hunting envoy Chao Ping is responsible for personally leading the attack on Luopa Mountain, and Dong Hu of the Ministry of Rites is responsible for dispatching the gods of the mountains and rivers. You may wish to gamble, Sanjung the of water, the gods of various mountains, and the monarch of the mountain, Wei Bo, will watch from the wall by then, or so." Nan Pin rubbed her neck. Her soul trembled. She had never suffered such a great humiliation in her entire life, and she hated this rebellious mud bottle alley cultivator so much. She immediately sneered, "It's good for Wenxing, let you in addition, Ning Yao, a Taoist priest in the ascended realm of swordsmanship. Don't forget, after all, we are the rules of the Middle-earth Confucian temple in the world, not to mention the literary sage who has just restored the gods. Even the saints of worship must respect themselves the etiquette rules." Never thought that the man in the green shirt smiled, stretched out his palm, and pressed a few times. "Don't be anxious, what's the hurry, just make a harmless joke. Don't you just allow Daoist Nanjan to stop talking, don't let me care about it." Live in Feijin. Nan Yan took a deep breath. "It's okay, as long as your majesty sees the shocking scene, it will not be a waste of sin." Chen Pingon joked, "Furthermore, you are not familiar with the Confucian temple and the sage of Confucianism, and I am familiar with it." Then Chen Pingon waved his sleeves casually and shattered a rather concealed mirror. "His Majesty in the palace estimates that he is looking at the flowers in the mist at this time. I don't know why the Queen Mother would act like this. I'm afraid the Qintian supervisor will be even more embarrassed." I will never know how to get along with the Empress Dowager. Chen Pingan snapped his fingers again, and the courtyard rippled like a pattern of clouds and water. Chen Pingans were like twisting chess pieces, as if they were peeling off a cocoon. Using mysterious fairy techniques, they twisted out a landscape picture scroll. The woman was kneeling and kowtow confessing her mistakes. She kowtows her head again and again, her tears are dim, her forehead is red, and there is a green shirt squatting on the side, seemingly wanting to support her, and she is afraid that the man and woman will not be allowed or not, so I had a shocked look on my face and chanting words, so I couldn't use it. Chen Pingan used his sleeves to break up the fake picture and smiled and said, I didn't follow the rules before, and I saw the Cloud Tower in the Changchun Palace. I have already reminded you, but I still don't have a long memory. Nanzan fellow Taoist, little Yuaning, it's not appropriate to discuss Taoism with me. Chen Pingan picked up the wine glass on the table and turned it gently, it's Dali's heart whether to toast or not. As for whether I drink fine wine or not, it doesn't count. This trip to Nanyao was a lot of thought. First, she lowered her frame, lowered her eyebrows, and tempted her to gain profit. If the talk was unsuccessful, she would start to confuse, as if guilty, relying on the dual identities of the woman and the Queen Mother, she felt that she couldn't be cruel. If nothing happens, she will use a bitter trick so that Emperor Song he can witness the tragic scene with her own eyes. In the final analysis, her greatest reliance is actually not the Dali Iron Cavalry and the Song family, but she is extremely determined. Chen Pingan in this house is actually not the lord of the Luopa Mountain, let alone the Great Wall of Jinchi. The hermit, but Qi Jingchun's younger brother as the national teacher Cui Yang, would definitely not want the great situation created by the two brothers together, and the stability of the continents and rivers would be buried in the hands of his younger brother. Is it too simple to think? The lady in the palace dress smiled, and instantly cleared up the complicated emotions in her heart, glanced at the cloud building not far away, and said softly, although I only saw Mr. Chen alone today, Nanzan must think reunited with two old friends at the same time. Chen Pingan twitched the corners of his mouth, it's a long way off. Otherwise, Daoist Nanzhan dares to come to this alley today, and I won't be named Qin. She sighed, lowered her head, and murmured, Mr. Qin, the broken tiles really cannot be handed over to you. This involves the great cause of my Dali court. It is my fault. I want to fight or kill. Just leave it to you to insult. Broadcast, Mimi reading app, it's really good, it's worth installing, even Android and Apple phones support it. Chen Pingan tapped the tabletop with his fingers, a bright orb flashed in the woman's hand, and the mirror was reopened. Inside the Dali Palace, His Majesty the Emperor and the Qintian supervisor finally saw the picture scroll again, feeling relieved. Both the monarch and the ministers had some hindsight, and finally guessed the authenticity of the picture, and it must have been Chen Pingan who moved. No matter what, a little movement, even if it was Chen Pingan's blindfold, it was better than the deadly silence from the beginning to the end of the house, and finally there was the unbearable bad news of a certain Dali court or Emperor Song He. In the courtyard, in an instant, Chen Pingan came to the woman behind her without knowing it, reached out her hand to grab the neck of the Empress Dowager, and slammed it on the stone table with a bang. Kowtowing like garlic. The emperor was stunned, then smiled bitterly. Chen Pingan always makes such a noise, so the suspicion formation, once or twice, what's the point? The old monk of Qin Tianjian pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, God knows, maybe it was on your majesty's side deliberately to look less upright. The old monk suddenly raised his head, squinted his eyes, some of his Tao heart had fallen, and he had to stretch his hand against his eyebrows. With his supernatural powers, it was vaguely visible that a golden dragon entrenched in the capital city of Dali, formed by the condensing of Song's dragon Qi and mountain and river Qi. A claw protruded from the cloud, pitch black as ink, holding down the former head. It's just this picture scroll, and it disappeared in a flash, but the old monk can be sure that it is definitely not his own illusion. The old monk murmured with anxiety, "What a murderous mind! Is it possible that this kind of vision of heaven and earth that emerges from the avenue can be faked?" Chenpingan is now only the cultivation base of the Yupu realm, and the capital is protected by a large formation. The woman in palace costume was about to cross the courtyard gate and stopped. She lifted the back of her hand, wiped her forehead, and dissipated the redness and bruises. Then she walked into the alley, and she was the graceful Empress Dowager in an instant. Up. As soon as Nan Yen touched the ground of the alley with one foot, the courtyard door behind her slammed shut. Chenpingan, who was sitting far away in the courtyard, smoothed both sleeves, and Ning Yao's inquiring voice sounded, "Pretend." Chenpingan said, "It's not a pretense, I almost couldn't help it, because I was almost certain that when my natal porcelain was broken back then, she and the Fulong ancestor who had a head and a tail was absolutely inseparable. It may have started the layout very early, and it is not the same as others who followed to bed afterwards. The wick is bright and slowly burning, just the inscribed name revealed by the natal lamp. That wick is not a southern hairpin, but has another name, surnamed Lu Mingjiang, which means that the Queen Mother of Daily is actually not from the Nan family of Yuzhong County, the son of the Lu family of the Yinyang family of Zhongtu. Chenpingan put the natal lamp into his sleeve, staring at the last remaining Qingming. Ning Yao asked, "What is going on again?" Chenpingan smiled bitterly. The two characters Qingming are at the beginning and the end. If the first piece of natal porcelain was in the hands of Lu Jiang and is in front of him, then the last piece of natal porcelain fragments, not surprisingly, is far away. Because most of them were sent to the Qingming world by senior brothers. Probably, if I can fly there with the sword in the future, I will have to rely on my own ability, under by Yujing's eyelids, to join the 14 realms. Ning Yao said, "In fact, as long as you become a sword repairman in the Ascension realm, you can be considered qualified to attack that by Yujing with a sword, but you may not be able to do that. I have seen Dao's second son Yudo before, and he is indeed almost invincible." Chenpingan put the two characters together in his sleeve. After sitting down, he took out a pot of wine and 2 flower cups. Ning Yao took the wine glass on the table himself. "The flowers are fancy." Chenpingan took advantage of the situation and took a wine glass on the table, nodded and said, "I always feel that way. It's not too late to find a buyer who is taking advantage of it." Ning Yao asked softly before drinking, "Cui Yang's protector is the only one, but wouldn't you be annoying?" Chenpingan shook his head, and smiled, "No." Ning Yao took a sip of wine and was silent. She found it annoying anyway. Chenpingan raised his hand and clicked casually, "I feel that my freedom is to become the person I want to be. It may be in a far-away place. No matter how detour, as long as I am going to that place is freedom." Putting his hand away, tapping his heart lightly, Chenpingan looked at Ning Yao, and Ning Yao continued to drink. Chenpingan patted the table for no reason. Although there was no movement, Ning Yao jumped. She immediately raised her head and stared. "Chenpingan, did you take the wrong medicine?" Chenpingan smiled and raised his hand, bent his thumb, and pointed to himself. "In fact, there are 2 copies of the letter of appointment. The one that the husband brought is a bit later, and the one that is earlier. Do you know what it is?" "I promised Ning Yao, Chenpingan, must be the most powerful sword immortal in the world, the most powerful sword immortal, whoever it is. Before I take a sword, I must give way." Ning Yao Wei shrugged his shoulders, and said, "The sword fairy of Yupu realm is really unusual, so great." Chenpingan smiled and said, "Don't overhear in the future." "Who am I?" She shook her head vigorously. No, Master Ning, I've already made up my mind that it's the who eats scales, and I am determined to find you to learn from the teacher. Had Ning Yao not been for the weird Qin Pingyan, she would have come to visit. Probably only this young girl in the world can choose who will be her master between Ning Yao and Qin Pingyan. Ning Yao couldn't laugh or cry, and reminded, read more and don't talk nonsense. The girl would like to persuade a few more words. Ning Yao raised her eyebrows slightly, and the girl shut up immediately. Qin Pingyan looked at the girl with vaguely similar eyebrows outside the door. Probably she used to be like this when she was a girl, when she was still on Huangli Mountain. Qin Pingyan suddenly said, Miss Liu, in fact, there is nothing good about the rivers and lakes, so don't go away in the future. In this life, with a father and a mother who loves you, you will be safe and stable for a lifetime, better than anything else. Then one day in the future, there will be a Shanzhua Yeshio named Zenji who accidentally travels here and sees you, Miss Liu, and then he may cry out, or he may be speechless. The girl put her arms around her chest and smiled and said, Who are you? Do you have the final say? Qin Pingyan smiled and stopped talking. The girl finally left in anguish. Master Ning's swordsmanship is high and low. It's not easy to say for the time being. Anyway, the eyes are not very good, and the disciples who send them to the door don't want it. No wonder she likes such a guy. Ning Yao closed the door, then waited for a while, opened the door in an instant, grabbed the tiptoe and walked back to the door of the house, and put his face to the door of the girl's ear again. The girl's reason was that she was worried that Master Ning would be slapped by people. I took her ears all the way to the counter and then let it go. The old shopkeeper saw it, and when he was not angry, he picked up the feather duster and tried to fight. Would the girl be afraid of this? Bounced out of the inn and went to buy a book. In the early years, the book of landscape travel that had been sold well in several bookstores in the early years was not courageous enough. She was distressed by the New Year's money. She was too late to buy it. If she wanted to buy it, she would not have it. Qin Pingyan, good guy, a thief has a beautiful blessing, and he likes a woman when he sees it. It's not serious. I just don't know, did that young man who practiced ghost and Taoism find his beloved girl Sue? It's a pity that there is no sequel to that travel note, so no one knows the result, so sad. Ning Yao returned to the house, remembered something, and asked, Why did you definitely have 14 tails before? Qin Pingyan said, I'm 14 years old, and it's the first time to travel far away from home. Probably from that year onwards, the boy was no longer a caged bird, and then began to control his own destiny. Besides this, just like the old national master Dolly, he made a joke that would make Nan Yen or Lu Jiang absolutely unable to laugh. In my eyes, Cui Yang, the life of a future Empress Dowager is only worth 14 taels of silver. Sword of Coming Chapter 836. Qin Pingyan said that he was going to the door, he was going to the Huishan temple to find the anti-foam, asking her to call someone for help, asking the old coachman to ask 3 questions, and possibly going to the household office to meet a friend. Ning Yao nodded, took out the few books dedicated to wooling insuring, picked out one of them, turned to the folding page. She could really read it with gusto. Qin Pingyan glanced at the content, swept it past, and saw the end of the page. I was writing that the protagonist was chased and killed by the enemy on a stormy night, took refuge and strayed into a mountain temple, met a person, sat in the main hall, with green robe and beard, Danfang eyes, watching the spring and autumn under the lamp. Qin Pingyan smiled and said, Okay. I bet that there must be another adventure. As long as one of the chasers can walk out of the temple, even if I lose. Ning Yao squinted and Qin Pingyan, only to reward 2 words, shut up. Qin Pingyan went to the counter of the inn. As a result, even the old treasurer, who was born and raised in Dalijing City, could not give the specific direction of the fire temple, but only a general direction. The old shopkeeper was a little strange. Chen Ping'an, a foreigner from the rivers and lakes, came to the capital. Instead of going to the more famous Taoist temple, he wanted to find a fire temple. In Beijing City, the Song Dynasty Tai Temple, the Confucian Temple dedicated to Confucian sages, and the Imperial Temple dedicated to the monarchs of the past dynasties, are recognized as the three major temples, but ordinary people cannot go. But in addition, only the temple fairs of the capital city God Temple and the capital land temple are extremely lively. Chen Ping'an found the only fire temple in the capital. The old woman who was guarding the door wished that the old woman was immortal. She was old, white-haired, and old-fashioned. However, she recognized the innocent card issued by the Ministry of Justice to the gods on the mountain. It was to find Aunt Fong. The old woman followed the rules and recorded her name in a book, and then let it go. When writing the name of the visitor, the old woman smiled and said that Master Xian had a good name. Chen Ping'an smiled and said it was given by his parents. The old woman nodded, talked to the young man about the taboo rules in the Temple of Fire, and then pointed the way, saying that Aunt Fong was in the flower shed. Chen Ping'an followed the route and saw the Auntie Fong. She sat lazily and casually on top of the flower shed. She was drinking in the morning, as if she looked like this all year round, except that she was still in that color. The knot is tied with a blue silk. Today, she is in a new outfit again, a pink silk dress with red silk, and some bizarre words to describe a goddess, put it on her body, the most iron post, Luyun posture, moon spirit. I saw Chen Ping'an, and Aunt Fong just raised the hip flask in her hand. Even if she said hello, she straightened her waist slightly, and slightly lifted her eyebrows. The woman was too beautiful, too natural and charming. Trouble, not to mention that there is still such a jar of jealousy in Chen Ping'an's house. Chen Ping'an looked at this Auntie Fong, for a moment in a daze, because he remembered that there was an old man in the backyard of the Yang family drugstore who smoked dry cigarettes all year round. Chen Ping'an did not learn that Aunt Fong sat on the steps, sitting on the stone bench beside the flower shed. Aunt Fong smiled and asked, "Do you want a drink?" The most mellow and authentic Baihuan Yang, every jar of wine is not young. Now, those flower goddesses are still women after all. They are attentive, and the cellars are very well sealed. They don't run out of wine. My trip to the blessed land that year was not a waste of work and a lot of search. Chen Ping'an smiled and nodded, and Aunt Fong threw out a jar of Baihuan Yang. Chen Ping'an took over the jar, as if remembering something, twisted his wrist, took out 2 pots of Qingshanshan wine brewed in his own shop, and threw a pot to seal it. Auntie, as a gift, explained, Auntie Fong has a taste and opened a small wine shop in partnership with someone, and the sales are good. Aunt Fong took the hip flask, put it to her ear, shook it, smiling strangely. Regardless of the wine, the year or the taste, are you embarrassed to present it as a gift? Chen Ping'an smiled and said, "Of course it is far better than Aunt Fong's Baihuan Yang, but it is cheap and good quality, cheap and good quality. People choose wine, wine is not chosen." Aunt Fong threw another jar of wine to Chen Ping'an, and joked, "If you want to keep my pot of Baihuan Yang, I just said that if you want an extra jar with Aunt Fong, what's the embarrassment? It really loses money." Chen Ping'an didn't take it seriously. Since this Auntie Fong was a friend of Mr. Cheese, he was his elder, and the elders chanted a few words, "Don't control it, just listen." Chen Ping'an took out a wine bowl, uncovered the red paper mud seal of the wine jar, poured a bowl of wine. The red paper and the sealing yellow mud were unusual, especially the latter, which was quite earthy. Chen Ping'an's twisted he picked up a little dirt and twisted it gently. In fact, the people under the mountain only know the word Jinchashu, but they don't know the age of the soil. Chen Ping'an curiously asked, "Auntie Fong, these soils are the 10,000-year-old soil of a blessed land? Valuable drinks and ages are long. Could it be someone who paid tribute to him in his early years?" Aunt Fong nodded. I have a good vision. Everything is money. And you guessed it. In the early years, the 100-flower brood stuffed with 10,000 years of soil was divided into 3 parts every 100 years, and they were given to the 3 powers, except for the ghosts. The 6th palace of the mansion, and the Fang's Hushan Qing Jun, who is in charge of the blessings of the earth, the heavens and all the immortals, is not the old man in the backyard of the Yang family drugstore, and this gentleman has no connection with the old heaven, but in fact it is already very remarkable. Fang's Hushan, which was ruled, was originally a commander's residence higher than the 5 mountains of Hauran. It was responsible for the removal of death records and the name of the upper life. It was eventually recorded in the Record of Immortality, in the top-grade Qinglu Zizhang, or the middle-grade Huanglabeijian Longevity Record. Please engrave immortal name in Fang's Hushan, Qingjun Rilu signed. In short, there is an extremely complicated set of rules, very similar to the officialdom of later generations. Forget it, talk about this, it's too boring, it has been translated. The old calendar of the chapter is too old, and it is useless to say more. Anyway, if you really want to go back to the source, it can be regarded as some attempts to formulate etiquette in the early years of the sage, whether it is a detour, or a road trip. In short, it is. It's hard work. Anyway, if you are really interested in these old past events, you can ask your husband to read a lot of miscellaneous books. Chen Pingan asked tentatively, there is a sect in Iazhao, called Juda Mountain. The Zhushitang has a secret identity, named Weibianlang, nicknamed Baojiqing, and is known as a green. Does Fang Zhushan have a heritage relationship? One of the foreign sword repairmen in the line of the hidden official of the Summer Palace, Deng Liang, is the awe-inspiring peak master of Juda Mountain in Ibeizu, and now he is also the chief worshipper of the Patriarch Hall of Feishing City. Aunt Fong sneered, it's just a little bit of light. Little Juda Mountain, how can it be compared with that square column mountain? But the founder of Juda Mountain, by chance, got a part of the broken mountain and barely inherited a little Tao Yun Xian. Pulse. As for the tripartite forces, Aunt Fong seems to have missed one, so Chen Pingan won't go into the details. If Aunt Fong doesn't say anything, there must be some unknown taboos here. And in these words, Aunt Fong's respect for the saint of ceremony is obviously from the heart. Chen Pingan hesitated, and then asked, dare to ask Aunt Fong, who is Mr. Sanshan Joho? Aunt Fong shook his head, and Chen Pingan stopped asking more questions. As a result, he only drank a bowl of Baihuanyang, and found that the sole benefit was not small. It was beyond expectation. In the small world, those who have not yet opened up the land are similar to the Chujun Shantao Chifu, and many painted mountains and rivers with few paintings, like rain showers for a long time, the threads gather like a rain curtain, and the aura is like rain. He is a real jade cultivator. If he is replaced by an earth fairy, wouldn't it be worthwhile? Is there a rain of spiritual energy? As for the monks of the lower 5 realms, it is estimated that after drinking such a bowl of wine, they will be drunk by Pei Ran's spiritual energy. Therefore, Chen Pingan didn't plan to continue drinking. For the rest, his own practice can be done step by step. Of course, this kind of immortal family foreign objects that help accumulate spiritual energy are of course not small, but in fact they are of little significance. Turn around and send the 2 jars of wine to Zhang Jiajin and Jiang respectively. Especially Zhang Jiajin, the small accountant who helped Wei Wenlong, the former teenager of the Great Wall of Jinchi, because he could not practice cultivation, now has white hair. In front of Aunt Fong, he put away the wine jars and bowls, not even the yellow mud crumbs on the table. Then Chen Pingan said, It'll help Aunt Fong to say hello to the coachman and ask him come here to tell. Aunt Fong smiled and said, Here. The old man who drove the car for Dong Hu and the Queen Mother one after another fell to the ground outside the flower shed. Aunt Fong rolled her eyes charmingly and waved the dust. The old coachman stood in place with arms around his chest, and didn't even look at Qin Pingan. This little was just a Taoist companion who relied on the Ascension Realm sword repair. "See what you can do," the old man said in a bad mood. "If you have a fart, let it go." Qin Pingan didn't bother to care about this old guy's ability to chat, really think he is Gu Qingsong or Lu Qiqing. Just straight to the point and asked, "Dolly Queen Mother Lu Jiang, whose alias is Nanzhan, is from the Lu family of the Yin and Yang family in central China?" Aunt Feng looked a little surprised and took a sip of wine. How did Qin Pingan know this inside story? This is a deeply hidden line. The first emperor Li had already learned the Tao that year and almost became a puppet. Nanzhan, or Lu Jiang, was demoted to the Changchun Palace by the Emperor Xian for no reason. Nanzhan is actually Yuzhang County Nanzhan. It is only by virtue of that string of rhinoceros beads that he remembers the memories of previous generations. Otherwise, with the ambition of the first emperor of Dali, and the old love between husband and wife, Lu Jiang will definitely not be able to live. It is in the history books, but it is a record of the death of a Queen Dali due to illness. The old coachman said bluntly, "I don't know, change one." Aunt Feng nodded slightly. The old coachman really didn't know about it, so he could not use his head. The old master said angrily, "Aunt Feng, you and him are making trouble, you and I are your own family, there must be a limit to turning your elbows out." Qin Pingan continued to ask, "Who taught the secret method of the burning of Lizhu Dongtian natal porcelain?" The old coachman was entangled, but wanted to slap a cruel word, but when he thought that there was a Ningyao in the capital, he endured it, but he turned his head and spit on the ground, seeing that Qin Pingan. Raising the eyebrows, the Aunt Feng was also full of dissatisfaction. The old coachman rubbed the toes of his shoes, wiped them dry, and then jumped up, his figure disappeared instantly. Aunt Feng glanced at the young man, showing a slightly tired look, human nature. Then she saw that Qin Pingan took out the wine bowl again, a pot of Qingshanshan wine, poured a bowl of wine, shook it, and started drinking and drinking. She was young and had a good heart. Not only calm, but also transparent. Qin Pingan raised the wine bowl and said with a smile, "Aunt Feng, thank you." Aunt Feng lifted the flask in her hand and drank separately. Qin Pingan asked a question that was curious for many years, but it's not a big deal, it's pure curiosity. "Auntie Feng, do you know that the lettering on the back of a statue of a is like a poem? Who carved it? Li Lu, or is it Ma Kuxuan?" Li Lu was the former master of the rivers and lakes. As one of the 5 highest of the ancient gods, even Nalu Shuiking was one of her summer resorts, and the real position was the long river of time. All the remains of ancient gods turned into stars from the sky, or the golden body dissipated into the time, but in fact they belonged to the long sleep and inhabited in that long river of time. Qin Pinganguang could not recognize whose handwriting was based on his handwriting, but Li Lu and Ma Kuxuan were the most likely. Aunt Feng shook her head and smiled, "I don't care, I'm not curious." Qin Pingan asked, "Aunt Feng said that someone wants to see me, is it the shopkeeper Yang from the drugstore in my hometown? Or General Su, the patrol envoy?" The former was told by Lu Xianying that shopkeeper Yang died without disease in his early years. After his death, he served as an errand at the capital city's god's temple. As for Su Gaoshan, Qin Pingan's guess, it is very likely that he will become a hero on the battlefield after his death. Dali helped to arrange a retreat. For example, he served as the of the martial arts temple in the capital. Su Gaoshan, in turn, maintained a country's martial arts. Moreover, Su Gaoshan was from the Han nationality. He used his military exploits all the way and served as a patrol envoy during his lifetime. He is already the ultimate military minister. But it is not those of the A tribe. Once the general dies, he loses his backbone, and it is easy for people to take the tea cold. The court was left in the cold. Aunt Fong smiled and said, "It is shopkeeper Yang." After Su Gaoshan's death, the last part of his life was to travel the world as a ghost, personally escorting the ghosts and soldiers back home from the north. When Su Gaoshan and the last one after Peo said goodbye, his soul dissipated. The Dai court naturally wanted to stay, but Su Gaoshan himself did not agree and only said that his children and grandchildren have their own good fortune. Chen Pingan heard this and was speechless for a long time. He just drank a sullen wine, and made up his mind silently. In the future, he needs to pay more attention to the Su family, at least to protect it quietly for 100 years. Aunt Fong laughed, twisted her fingers, and put away a wisp of breeze. "Treasurer Yang can't come, let me say something. I want you to go back to your hometown, remember to go to the backyard of his pharmacy." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "Thank you Aunt Fong for helping me and shopkeeper Yang, thank you." After drinking a pot of wine, Chen Pingan stood up and said goodbye. "I won't continue to disturb Aunt Fong." Aunt Fong nodded, and then asked, "Don't visit this fire temple." Chen Pingan shook his head. The Five Elements family called the Emperor's destiny that thrived with fire virtue, or fire virtue. It's just not the case of the Dai dynasty, so there is only one fire temple in the capital. Like the great Source dynasty of Luzhou in Beiju, it is a nation founded by virtue of water. Aunt Fong shook the jug, "Then don't give it away." Chen Pingan returned along the original road and arrived at the entrance of the Huishan temple. He met the old lady of Miaozhu who also served as the concierge, so he stopped and chatted with the old mother before Chen Pingan left. Aunt Fong continued to drink alone at Sherdang in the flower shed. Binging puzzles, whisking stars, cooking all over the world, refining the 5 mountains, Wei Weiss fire morality, all gods admire and stop. After Chen Pingan walked out of the Huishan temple, he looked back on the deserted street. What is practice? The of water walks the water. What is asking for Buddha? Vulcan asks for fire. After that, Chen Pingan went to the office of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development. Instead of looking for Guan Iran in Yi Chi Alley, he chose a more open and honest way to talk to his friends. As for the husband, he was not idle either. In Dali capital, there was a poor old gentleman wearing a Confucian shirt. He first went to the Jingqing Translation Bureau, and put his hands together with the monks to help interpret the scriptures. Then he went to the Chongshu Bureau, and he would also call a sect leader. Regardless of his own Confucian status. It's just that no one is destined to be held accountable, when Sheng is like this, who has objections. Otherwise, who else can you complain about, saying that there is a scholar's behavior, which is not in accordance with the etiquette? Is it to find the most holy master, or the holy saint? The vast landscape of the world's Shanshui Dibao has gradually lifted its ban. Countless news rush to make all the monks in the world, like a drunkard who has been greedy for many years, can finally drink freely, only to drink stubbornly. He only regarded it as a son of a wealthy prince from a frontier army, Guan Iran's friend. The threshold would not be low, not the family background. Its character, so when the young official looked at the man, he not only put the Erlang's legs away, but also took the initiative to smile and nod in tribute to him. He didn't think it was too strange, and smiled and nodded in return. Guan Iran obviously has a close relationship with this person, and said casually, "There is no place to sit for you." The man lightly tossed the Shanshui Dibao to Guan Iran, and sat casually on the threshold. "Didn't you say that you had a friend from the rivers and lakes in your early years? This Chen Pingan is the other Chen Pingan. It should be bullish, shameless. You really drank with him, and you drank again and again under the wine table circle." Looking back, this Chen Jianxian came to Beijing as a guest. "You helped save a wine bureau, so that I will be proud, but I can't beat him and still drink." But he Chen Pingan was silent. To say that it is only at the wine table, except Lu Jinglong, I really don't persuade anyone. After all, the human yamen is not the well-informed Ministry of Rights and Criminal Justice. Moreover, the 6 parts of the work are clear. It is possible that except for the master Shang Shu, who is known as the local official, the other chief officials on the Hubu side may not know the inside story of the previous turmoil near Ichi Lane. However, the middle-level officials of the 6 yamen in the capital are indeed notoriously inferior. Once the local government becomes an official, if it can be transferred back to the capital, the future is bright. Guan Yiran coughed to remind this guy to say a few words less. Chen Pingan smiled. Anyway, Guan Yiran has no guilty conscience at all, and with a clear conscience on his face, he said to the colleague, "It's not a second time, and occasionally I will tie him at the wine table. Next time if I have a chance, if he comes to the capital and leaves in no hurry, he will definitely invite you for a drink." The young official nodded, then turned to look at the man in the green shirt, and asked, "Iran, who is this?" Chen Pingan was already sitting in a precarious position, and he took the initiative to smile and said, "I am the little brother of Master Guan who collected from the rivers and lakes, not from the capital. I didn't just arrive in the capital, so I rushed over to worship the mountain." Guan Yiran waved his hand and complained, "What little brother, this is awkward to say. They are all good brothers who meet each other and hate it." The young official wiped his face. "Iran, look, this guy's mountain companion is Ning Yao, and Ning Yao who ascended the city. I am envious of the dead man, yes, bullish." Then he looked at the guest and smiled, "Brother, right?" Chen Pingan nodded and smiled, "Envy, you must envy." Guan Yiran waved and hurried away. "Isn't it just a Shanshui mansion report? If there is anything worth making a fuss about, you should hurry up." Guan Yiran introduced to Chen Pingan with his heartfelt words, "This guy is one of more than a dozen chief officials of the Qing dynasty in the Ministry of Households. Don't think he is young. In fact, he is in charge of several northern states including Hongzhou. Your hometown, Longzhou, is not far away, and now you are temporarily accommodating all the scales of the North Dangfang. And just like you are from a market." Chen Pingan nodded lightly, "I can see it." It was a veritable scene, because this young official was surrounded by several red lanterns hung by various landscape gods behind him. Guan Yiran asked, "If you're not busy, I really want to be on the Changpu River back to help you two save a wine bureau. How about it? Can you give me this face?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Of course it's okay. But the wine bureau will have an appointment in half a month." Guan Yiran didn't ask the reason, but blinked, "When the time comes, let's drink this wine." "Chen accountant, do you have the courage?" Chen Pingan categorically said, "I'm not good for a sip of wine." The young official didn't know that the two of them were there with their heartfelt words, took off their official hats, put their palms in the bun, and said sentimentally, "I'm not busy with things at hand for the time being. I'm not allowed to breathe." In a tone of voice. The case is so painstaking and clear. After all night long, I may go to the Interpretation Bureau in the future and I will not be treated as an outsider. Soon afterwards, another official sent an official document, and the young official with strong culture also took back the mansion report and left. Chen Pingan knew that he would be very busy working as an errand in the department of dailyhood, but he really didn't expect Guan Yi. However, he was so busy that he would leave Guan Yiran a jar of 100-flour distilled rice, and when he turned around, he would ask for more jars with Aunt Fong. Guan Yiran was not polite, and only sent Chen Pingan to the door of the house. Chen Pingan walked all the way back to the inn, and to the side of the alley, the young Zhao Duanming waved, "Mr. Chen, I have something to do with you." Chen Pingan nodded lightly, with both hands on the sleeves, and walked leisurely. When he stepped into the alley, he smiled and said, "Yeah, it's amazing. It turns out that there are 3 small worlds overlapping each other, and chain sword charms are used. Come on, you are really rich. Then Chen Pingan laughed dumbly. Did these 11 people try to deal with themselves today in order to find the place, just like they dealt with Wu Shuangjiang on a night boat? Chen Pingan was currently in the Xianfu ruins of the formation master Han Zhoujin, probably the Xianjia Inn opened by the female ghost Gan before. The teacher who had memorized the Dharma saw the absent-minded student muttering to the window. The master suddenly tapped the ruler and uttered, "Zhou Jiagu." The young scholar was dumbfounded. Not only did he catch the master by himself, the key is that the old gentleman outside the window was not righteous and suddenly disappeared. Zhou Jiagu stood up tremblingly. Then Zhou Jiagu found out the window, headed by the head of the academy, came a mighty group of old masters from the academy. Then, there was an old gentleman who had just shrunk his head and bent his knees before squatting on the wall outside the window to hide, and got up angrily. The old gentleman is really not thin-skinned, and he laughed and explained with Zhou Jiagu, "It's not going to stand for a long time, it's a bit tiring." Zhou Jiagu found that the teacher was blushing, and mistakenly thought that the teacher was disturbed by others. The young man immediately bit the bullet and explained, "Mr. Fan, this is my uncle from afar. Today is to visit me in the college." "No, the uncle doesn't know the rules of the college, so I have to blame." The old scholar stroked his beard and nodded and smiled. "Is very kind." Older scholars, don't say a few strange things that pretend to be surprising. Don't be afraid that young people can't remember themselves. Don't just put hats on young people at every turn. What kind of people's heart is not going to be the same, you can pull it down. In fact, I just changed from a little to a bastard. No matter how disappointed the elderly are, they must always be hopeful for the young. The future world will get better and better. Then Zhou Jiagu found that Fan Fuzi was so excited that he stumbled out of class. Finally, standing in the corridor under the eaves, Fan Fuzi looked solemn, straightened his clothes, and saluted the old gentleman. Besides, all the old masters, including the owner of Chunshan Academy, can't afford to do the same thing. It seems that as long as Wenxing doesn't speak, he will continue to talk. The old scholar waved his hand and smiled, "Don't be pestered like this. I haven't eaten cold pig's head for many years. I'm not used to it." All the schoolmasters slowly got up. Chunshan Academy's head Wu Lingjuan stepped forward and asked softly, "Mr. Wenxing, go to drink tea elsewhere?" The old scholar shook his head, walked to the Master Fan, and said with a smile, "Mr. Fan, why don't we talk about it? In the second half of the class, I will teach the students the law." Fan Fuzi said again, his lips trembled and he couldn't speak. Old scholars walked into the classroom, and dozens of college students in the room had already stood up and thought. Especially that Zhou Jiagu, who had been talking to Master Wenxing for a long time, was totally confused at the moment. The old scholar raised his hand, "No need to be polite, knowledge is important, sit down." Mr. Fan, all the masters in the college, just stood by the window outside and listened to the teachings of the sages, and no one went to compete with the students in the house. The old scholar smiled and said, "Before explaining the Dhamma, I will explain to Zhou Jiagu why he speaks more etiquette and less benevolence. Before that, I want to hear Zhou Jiagu's insights and how to remedy it." The old scholar looked at the young scholar and joked, "Zhou Jiagu, don't be afraid of saying the wrong thing. Even if you say something wrong, I don't care. Who dares to care? Is this the truth?" Zhou Jiagu trembled, "Master Wenxing." "I'm a bit tensed," said, speechless. The old scholar smiled and asked, "Then I will give a lecture first. When will you be relieved, then hello to me." Zhou Jiegu wiped the sweat from his forehead and nodded vigorously. Fan Fuzi outside the window smiled and cursed in his heart, "Stinky boy, courage, dare to learn from Mr. Wenxing. Worthy of being a student I taught." I have to ask Zhou Jiegu about the detailed process when I look back. On this day, nearly 1,000 masters and students of Chunshan Academy were crowded outside the classroom. The Confucian literary sage, after the restoration of the Confucian Temple, the first preaching and teaching work in Haoran, it was in the Dalikunchen Academy in Aquarius. After Chen Pingon swaggered away, the three people in the alley, the array master Han Zhoujin, the capitalist Dale Guling, and the Yin-Yang family Sui Lin, each looked at each other and were a little discouraged. They were all so deliberate and still unable to detain each other. Get up, for this originally thought to be extremely dangerous. 11 people deduced dozens of possibilities in the yin, and the three of them were responsible for setting up the formation and asking the king to enter the urn. The formation of the formation is far from the slightest difference, especially when it comes to the operation of the small world, such as choosing a more spacious street outside the alley, which is also the only way for Chen Pingon, but the formation borders the world more and not only maintains it. The operation of the big formation is more difficult, and there are many flaws at the same time, and the sword repairs the sword, and it happens to be the best at breaking 10,000 methods with one sword. The female ghost Gain and Lu Hui stood side by side on a wall. She complained, "It's not enough, but it's over before it starts. I don't believe in evil, so I really can't touch a corner of Chen's clothes." In lane, Han Zhoujin smiled bitterly, and walked out of the alley with Guling, saying, "It's really difficult to deal with a hidden official." Since there was no fight, Guling had nothing to do and knocked on the alley wall. "It's really a headache." On the Dolly Spy side, there are not many records of the hidden identity, only know that it is the head of the 100-sword immortals of Tuition, but as Wen Haizhou's first disciple, the sword fairy Shouqin, the content is extremely detailed. The earliest record is the cogwheel, the interview between Chen Chen and Zhang Lu, and the subsequent record of Shi Chen's deeds is very long. At the end of that copy of the file's secret record, there were 2 autographs written by the national masters. The top assassins are expected to ascend to the realm. Sui Lin put away a total of 6 rare sword lock charms made of golden material, in addition to several charms specially used to capture the circulation of Qin Pingan's qi machine. There is a saying, in Qin Pingan, their 11 people are really rich. Like this fight, even without a fight, it consumed a lot of Guyu Qin. They have at least 1 semi-celestial soldier. As long as they want to spend money, the Ministry of Rights and Criminal Justice jointly set up a private treasury for them. As long as they open their mouths, regardless of whether they want money or things, the Dolly Court will give it. There is an attendant in the Li and Xing departments, who personally stared at the matter, and the person in charge at the Xing department was Xiao Yu. Han Zhoujin was a little upset, losing 2 games in a row. Even if he lost to Chen Pingan, he would inevitably still be aggrieved. Where is the error? It seems that he knew it was a trap from the beginning. Could it be that every time he goes out, every few steps are big? If you meet someone on the road, he will be considered a trivia. In the distance, Yu said in his heart, it may be the name of Mr. Qin. It may also be a certain intuition honed on the battlefield. Just like the fist is fed, the intuition can also be cultivated. We still experience fighting. Too little. Gayan, nicknamed Painter, was a bit embarrassed. At that time, she was posing as a teenager Zhao Duanming. Yuan Huajing said, "They are all withdrawn." Chen Ping'an returned to the inn, and before crossing the threshold, he took out a paper bag from his sleeve. Seeing Chen Pingan, the old man put down the Jialing bamboo carvings in his hand, smiled and said, "It's really a busy man. Where did you go to pick up money for ignorance?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Come on, I almost got sacked by a group of small thieves." Of course, the old man didn't take it seriously. He joked, "We have kidnappers here in Beijing. Even if they do, they don't know how to find a rich man." Insert an app, a perfect re-engraving of the old version of the book-chasing artifact, an interchangeable app Mimi reading. Chen Pingan put the bag on the counter. "On the way back, I bought a lot. If you don't dislike it, the shopkeeper can bring it to drink." The old man nodded and smiled. It was a bag of twists which didn't cost much, but it was all his heart. She saw Chen Pingan pull out the piece of red paper from his sleeve, pour some 10,000-year-old earthy yellow mud scraps on the yellow paper, start to twist the soil a little, put it in her mouth and taste it. Ning Yao said, "You can really be a situation-based geographer. Be a baozhai, look and feel good, quack doctor, fortune teller, write family notes, open a restaurant." Chen Pingan wiped his mouth and smiled. "I don't want to press my body with a lot of skills." Ning Yao asked, "The young ghost repairer named Zeng on Qingsha Island?" Chen Pingan said, "I don't know what to say with Zenji, so I just talked to him, so that I could travel around the capital city in the future and increase my experience of the rivers and lakes. After that, it depends on his own opportunities and good fortune." Ning Yao said, "For no reason, I have a good impression of Ma Di, and my heart is big." "She still lives in the fox fur talisman paper?" Chen Pingan quickly glanced at Ning Yao. "Fortunately, it is not an irony." Chen Pingan immediately nodded and said, "Yes, she has always liked that pair of talisman skins back then. Everyone has the love of beauty." Ning Yao wondered, "I didn't want them to leave Shujian Lake and settle down in Luopa Mountain." Chen Pingan Yao shook his head, "Each has its own fate. It's difficult to travel in the world, difficult in mountains, and dangerous in water. Dangerous mountains and rivers destroy vehicles and boats, if it is easier than people's hearts. So during that trip, Miss Su, the dull and honest boy Xingyi, the cheerful and lively, and scrupulous Ma Di, and many more people who traveled back then were actually Chen Pingan's protectors." Chen Pingan shook his sleeves. He had nothing to do in the Great Wall of Jinchi, and refined all the texts of the landscape travel notes. There were a lot of refining characters. 24 texts were plucked from the sleeves of the blue shirt, and then they just came together. Became the 11 names of the monks who transferred the earthly branch Song Su, Han Zhou Jin, Go Ling, Yu Yu, Lu Hui, Ho Ju, Yuan Hua Jing, Sui Lin, Gayan, Go Cun. Hard work. 2 sword repairman, formation master, Confucian scholar, Taoist priest, monk, soldier monk, yin and yang monk, ghost repair. The assassin of a young man, I don't know for now. The young rider, named Sus Ho. Except for the heroic night tour, this person made 1 shot. After that, the 2 battles in the capital did not make any shots. Chen Pingan looked at these names while distracting and immersing his consciousness in Zio Oceandi. He carefully checked his soul and various big mansions. There was nothing unusual. There were no traces of passive hands or feet in his robe. The small Taoist temple that I passed by before, the capital of the Jingshi Dao's Henjia office, hangs the couplet, "The pine and cypresses and the golden gardens raise the real blessings, and the eternal and spiritual temples are cultivated." A small bald head came riding a fire dragon patrol hunter, sitting high on the fire dragon head, and said, "If you want to ask about the past, the recipient in this life is." Chen Pingan said helplessly, "I understand the truth." The little bald head asked, "Remember the second wish?" Chen Pingan nodded. The medicine Buddha has 12 great aspirations, of which the second is the wish for all beings to break through the darkness. May my body be like colored glaze when I attain Bodhi in the next life, clear inside and out, clean and unblemished, broad and light, magnificent merits, good-natured and dignified, over the sun and the moon, various careers. 1,000-year dark room, the light is bright. The little bald head had arms around his chest, and said angrily, "It is useful to ask a bodhisattva." This sentence was personally said when you were a child, but what did you think when you grew up? Looking back, every time you were a child, the next time I went up the mountain to pick up the medicine, and down the mountain to cook the medicine, did it work or not? Isn't it considered sincere and good? Chen Pingan gave a soft hum. The little bald headed away by the dragon, cursing, Chen Pingan suffered, and was silent for a long time. When he stood up, he watched the water and took a self-portrait, muttering to himself, "The biggest hardship is yours." Then Chen Pingan's face was pale. "This bastard, do you want to die?" Mustard quickly withdrew from Xiaoshiandi. Chen Pingan didn't even have time to say anything to Ningyao, so he shrank the mountains and rivers one step at a time, and went straight to the Xianjian, to restrict the landscape. Anyone who is not careful, these guys will invite another, Chen Pingan. Pure as God, you're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.